Okay, good evening. The Design Review Board public meeting of October 23, 2013, 14. Shall we begin one more time? Okay, well, we will. Good evening. The Design Review Board public meeting of October 23rd, 2014 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones at this time. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a project, if it is returned for redesign, must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent hearings. Current Design Review Board agendas are available by visiting our website at www.glendaleca.gov. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and Design Review Board appeals is available at the table by the front door. Please note that all appeals must be filed within 15 calendar days of the Design Review Board decision date. The chairperson may reorder agenda items at his or her discretion. In terms of a roll call, Board Member Charchin.
Present.
Board Member Malikian.
Present.
Board Member Mardian.
Present.
Chair Palmer.
Here.
And Board Member Simonian is absent this evening. Report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on October 15th, 2014. Oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. I have no oral communication cards.
I have none.
And have been submitted. There are no staff announcements at this time. We have 3 items on tonight's agenda. I would like to turn the meeting over to Chairman Palmer.
Okay, our first item on the agenda is PDR 14-18628, 330 Wonderview Drive. Titus, would you give us the history of that?
Yes, thank you. The project at 330 Wonderview Drive consists of demolishing the existing one-story single-family house and 2-car garage and constructing a new 2-story, 7,300 square foot single-family dwelling with an attached 4-car garage on the 2.3 acre parcel. You'll notice on the computer screen, this is an aerial shot of the project site. The site is zoned R1 single-family residential, Florida District 2, and features an average current slope of approximately 66%. The project also includes constructing a swimming pool on a lower level below the house, and site improvements will involve 1,590 cubic yards of cut and 215 cubic yards of fill. The project site is an odd-shaped lot located mid-block on the south side of Wonderview Drive. The 2.3 acre parcel is a through lot, so it has frontage on Wonderview and also frontage on McGinn down below. All of these surrounding hillside lots have been developed with a mix of 1, 2, and sometimes 3-story residences. The subject property has access off a long driveway. If you don't mind, I'm going to go up to the board.
Want the pointer?
Thank you. Notice this is a topo survey of the project site, and this is the proposed site plan of the project. There's an existing long driveway off of Wonderview Drive that leads to an existing building pad. The building pad itself is approximately 14 feet below Wonderview Drive and then dips down sharply approximately 120 feet above McGinn Drive to the south. As noted, it does have an average current slope of 66%. An environmental information form was submitted for the project. An initial study was prepared by staff, and the final negative declaration was included in your staff report for your review along with this project. In terms of site planning, The project essentially is going to utilize the existing building pad. The applicant is proposing to do quite a bit of grading in order to lower the building pad approximately 4.5 feet, thereby having, and this I'll go into it in mass and scale, but the building pad, as you'll notice here, is going to be lowered and utilized. The structure itself somewhat echoes the shape of the lowered building pad, and then there is a lower level pool and deck terrace proposed below the house. The house itself, as noted, is down a long driveway of over 100 feet. The project, other than being oriented towards the driveway, essentially faces the south side and overlooks the city views down below. So there is not much change to the existing site plan other than enlarging the building footprint and lowering the building pad. In terms of mass and scale, as you are well aware, the existing house is somewhat of a modest one-story, under 3,000 square foot house. They are proposing a 7,300 square foot approximately square foot house, 2 stories. It is by definition a 2-story structure, even though they are proposing a small basement underneath the living room, simply because at a vertical level, there is never a 3-story structure. So it's essentially a 2-story structure. The basement is somewhat submerged into the hillside as well. This is going to be the largest home in the area. In the submitted survey, the next largest home is approximately half of its size, and the average size is approximately 2,300 square feet. If it was not for the location of the building pad being set off of Wonderview down a long driveway and the building pad being lowered, the topography also of the site, staff would definitely be arguing for a reduction in the overall size. Due to the nature of the project site, it doesn't have frontage on Wonderview. It doesn't have adjacent neighbors on either side, both to the east or the west. And because of its somewhat lowered building pad, the house is unarguably large, but within its context, someone would be able to argue that it might not essentially be compatible with the surrounding residences, but at least the impacts of this mass and scale are not as great as you would have on lots that are completely parallel to each other with houses within 10 feet on either side, which would be a standard R1R interior setback. The house has been specifically terraced. Staff actually met with the project architect probably more than 10 times to discuss the various items that could be addressed, both in terms of articulation of the elevations as well as the stepping down of certain facades and roof lines. So the flat roof, you'll notice a sense of modulation that somewhat is breaking up the overall long, elongated mass within the hillside. The flat roof also helps in terms of the neighbors to the north. There are 2 neighbors on Wonderview Drive, which would be the neighbors at 320 and 310 Wonderview Drive. Because of the lowered building pad and the flat roof, there is less negative impact. The city does not have a view protection ordinance, but in this case, the applicant has tried to mitigate any type of looming or mass and scale over the neighbors to the north on Wonderview Drive. Lastly, in terms of design and detailing, the proposed house is designed in somewhat of a contemporary style. The neighborhood itself is a mixture primarily of ranch and split-level homes, but there is a variety within the neighborhood, so there is no one predominant style. The house is to be constructed of smooth finished stucco atop a split-faced concrete block. It will also have a composite travertine tile to be used in certain accent walls, aluminum framed windows, a built-up wood fascia parapet and accent bands, and those accent bands and the fascias, again, trying to accentuate the horizontal lines of the overall project to sort of bring it down to a master scale, as opposed to having the project focus on verticality and appear taller than it should. Much of the exterior design focuses, again, on the fenestration patterns. As you'll notice, and I will go back up to the board, or I should say, point out the left-hand side is the more public feature on the south elevation, which would be the elevation at the very top. And might be easier to describe. Here, you'll have the larger band windows. This is the living room section that maximizes the view overlooking the city. They have a 1.5-story height limit. Again, this is the more public space. It maximizes the views. The dining room is directly adjacent to it, and the master bedroom, some of the living quarters or whatnot above that as well. You'll notice that the left-hand side is the more private portion of the residence. It's the bedroom wing. And again, the fenestration patterns, the windows overall are smaller on that side. And they still, however, carry over sort of this modulation and fenestration pattern. The tripart windows that are carried over both in the public living room, dining room portion, as well as then in the private bedrooms. So basically, the fenestration pattern is trying to drive the elevation. The color contrast, there are darker windows, and obviously tan beige stucco walls, and also a split-faced tile block, split-faced block. There was a comment also made from staff in the staff report that perhaps the white could be reconsidered just because of the stark contrast to it. But with the issue of the size and of the project aside, staff ultimately is providing suggestions for you if you were to go ahead and be inclined as to approve the project. Those conditions are set forth at the bottom of your staff report. And the first condition being to reduce the projection from the slope of the deck, of the pool deck down below, to be more compatible both with the topography and the hillside design guidelines, which discourage greater projections from slopes. So it would be to actually bring that projecting pool deck a little back. The second item would be to provide information regarding the size and installation pattern for the travertine tile for review and approval by the Urban Design Studio staff. Third would be to consider changing the color of the parapet fascia and accent banding to be more complementary other than white. The fourth would be to specify a light-colored gravel roof rather than the dark cladding proposed, and that's most obvious in the perspective drawing. You'll notice right above Board Member Mardian's feet, and you'll notice that's more of a bird's eye view in that dark color. But just so noted, it is a gravel roof, and there is only one smaller section that's above the living room that's proposed to be a skylight. The fifth comment or proposed condition of approval would be to install an irrigation system throughout the site where required in order to irrigate the existing mature trees along Wonderview and on the downslope. Then also to maintain all proposed and existing on-site landscaping in good condition. This was something that was mentioned in one of the letters that was received for the environmental, that the previous owners did not adequately maintain the landscaping, and that neighbors actually were watering the landscaping on behalf of the property owner. So staff wanted to make sure that this particular project, because it's new construction, provides the adequate irrigation system to maintain all of the existing landscaping on site. And lastly, the last condition was to specify that all roof drainage be conducted through internal leaders so that there'd be less downspouts that would punctuate an accent along the facades as opposed to having it internally be drained. Those would be the 6 recommended conditions. You'll notice that there is a negative declaration. 3 comment letters were received. Staff addressed each of those comment letters point by point within the final negative declaration. We also received 2 letters today regarding the project. One was from a Mr. Stephen Redinger, who lives at 230 Wonderview Drive. You did receive a copy of it on the dais. He made note of there are plastic drainage pipes that are currently being used for drainage on the lot from 330 that drain onto his property. And you'll notice that the photographs were included as part of his letter. I went upstairs to speak to the Public Works Engineering staff, and it's noted in their comments for the environmental review, a grading and drainage plan will be required if and when this project is approved and goes into plan check. They have been made aware of this plastic drainage pipe that has cross drainage that is not permitted by any code within the city, so that will be addressed as part of the plan check process. And lastly, you also received I would imagine a letter from Mr. Eugene Smith as well, who also submitted a letter on behalf of himself and his wife with regards to the environmental. And so you'll notice that he has a number of comments regarding the initial subdivision and the conditions within that neighborhood tract. So that concludes staff's presentation. This was a very complicated case with many meetings. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you might have, and I know that there are a number of neighbors in the audience and the applicant as well.
Do we have any questions for staff?
Have we gotten a certified letter from a surveyor for the staking?
The survey actually was submitted, the larger scale survey. You'll notice here at the very
The
top.
staking, the flags and the story poles that they've
The
done.
story poles, yes. The story poles are up. The photographs are actually
Have they been
posted.
certified? And are they like based on a surveyor and they've certified the heights and everything?
From the certification, self-certification.
Okay. So, okay.
Any other questions?
I had a question, but it's a little different. Those story poles, the height, is it the top of the roof or the top of the plate?
I believe it is to the. I'm going to look to the applicant. I believe it's to the very top of the roof.
Okay.
So, and that would be required as part of story poles.
My next question, is this slope considered a transitional slope based on our hillside guidelines? And when you have conditions like this, just, I'm not sure.
No.
Any other
I mean,
questions?
obviously, in the original grading pattern, there are 2 levels down below. There are a number of concrete swales that were constructed as part of the original subdivision and construction of the house. Those will have to also be maintained on a regular basis as required by code. And the current property owner would be responsible for their maintenance.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing, and the first speaker I have is Mr. Hagobian.
Good evening, Madam Chair and board members. My name is Edward Hagobian. I'm the architect of this project. My address is, for the records, 220 South Kenwood Street, Suite 210, Glendale 91205. First, I have to thank Vilya and Jay that they spent more than a year and a half having many meetings to work on this project to get to the point that we are today. I would like to mention several other things that was not in the staff report. There are houses that I gave you a copy of that the one sheet, that handwritten thing. There are houses that are even bigger than this house. This house is, when we say 7,300, about 200 square foot of it comes from the garage calculation. As you know, when the garage is above 700 square foot, that difference is added to the living space. That one thing. The other thing is that about 900 square foot is from the basement. If we take this out of this calculation, the size of this house will be 6,300 something. While we have one house in Wonderview is 137, Wonderview Drive is 6,756 square foot. And this 6,756 square foot does not include the garage size. If you add a three-car garage, which is about 660 square foot, this house will be about 7,300 square foot. The next house is in 181 Wonderview Drive, 6,154. Again, you have to add the garage on it, and it goes on and on. Then there's another house at 1970 Rimcrest Drive that is 6,740 square foot. Again, we have to add the garage to that. Another house at 1964 Rimcrest Drive, 6,283 square foot. 140 Cannonwood Drive is 6,214 square foot. Now, I have to mention several other things that when I was reading the comments by the neighbors, one of the comments is that we will dig down for the pool to have a pool there. We are not going. The deck is about 5 feet to 7 foot higher than the natural grade. So we will dig like about 2.5 feet at most where the pool is. So the grading in the pool will be minimal. Driveway is 15 feet wide, and the slope is not very steep. It's gentle almost. And as you know, the code is 9 feet driveway for regular houses, but we understand since this is a long driveway, it is wider so that it can serve better. If I can approach to the plans and show.
Where the pointer went.
One of the comment is that this house is a 4-story. We know that it's not 4-story. It's split level 2-story. Then the comment was about the glass roof. That glass roof is here. It is not visible from anywhere. From here, this is the glass roof. This is in fact a skylight. It's not a glass roof. Then one of the comments by neighbor is that there will be a reflection from the retaining walls. First of all, the retaining walls are short, like 4 to 5 feet. Then we have a landscaping in front of it. Then we have all the materials of the retaining walls, a split face. It's not like a shiny stone that will reflect. Even the stone that we are using for the house is matte. So there is no such a reflection. The location of the air conditioning unit is shown in the plan, is in the back of the house. As you can see in the site plan, there are a lot of trees to the south of the property. And this tree almost blocks the view of the house from down street. Then there was a comment that people are throwing empty bottles and cans, and of course there was something mentioned that I don't see that to be proper to mention in a public hearing like this. But obviously, if somebody is living here, will maintain this, then hopefully they can somehow control these people that in the nighttime will come and park here. For the fire purpose, you know that we have to have fuel modification up to a distance that will make this house safe. By the way, if you see the landscape plan, you will see that in front of all these retaining walls, we have landscaping, we have bushes, we have trees that will block the retaining walls. One of the comments by neighbors is that this is a field. As far as I know, first of all, we have a soil report engineered by a soil company, and they have recommended that we can build a house here. I don't know if the refill is here, wherever it is, I don't know. This channels here, these drainage channels here will remain. We are not blocking them. We are not touching them. And one of the comments that people will park here and the street will be busy and they will walk to the house. How can I think of that? Somebody will walk more than 150 feet every day back and forth, while we have plenty space to park a 4-car garage here. We have the trash enclosure location, and as I said, brush fire will not happen here because of the irrigation that we will have and maintenance that we will have. We have been working with Vilja and Jay for a long time, and there is a lot to talk about this project, and I cannot memorize this whole thing that we went through, but if you have any question, I will be glad to answer.
What was the reason for putting a circular drive?
Just in case if they have a guest coming to their house, they can park in that circular driveway. And the frontage, as you can see, the frontage of the lot is huge. It starts from here, goes all the way. If you have a site plan, there is a huge frontage here. So the circular driveway is not like for a small house with 50 or 60 or 70 or 80 feet frontage, which occupies most of the front of the house, which, of course, the zoning code requires that we have to have a certain percentage landscape in front portion. But here, 90% of it is landscape.
Where you've put that circular drive, you have 7 and 9 foot.
No, we don't have a retaining wall higher than 5. We cannot have higher than 7 feet. Of course, in the front setback only, which is 15 feet from the property line, we can have 7 feet, but we are not using that. We don't need that. We have column that, we have walls that do not exceed 5 feet. That can be mitigated, that we cannot use 7-foot retaining wall.
Any other questions?
Yes, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Please. Okay, on your C-section for the pool, right up there on number 1, you have no detail on the cut, and now you're indicating that you're going to be going down 2.5 feet.
Yeah.
My question is that calculation for the cut that's being removed, is that part of the total
Yes.
calculation?
Yes.
For the house and for the pool?
It's minimal, this, compared to the house, maybe 20 cubic yards or so, that's it. Responding to your question regarding height, we are allowed to have up to 15 feet driveway height, including the handrail. If in some locations its size is because of that code, and not the retaining wall, they are not always retaining wall, they are just walls. Behind the wall, there is no dirt, so it's not considered to be retaining wall.
I'm just looking at the grading plan showing 7 and 9.
7 and 9 feet, maybe a very little in the beginning, but that's a wall. It's not retaining. It's just wall.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
I do. Can you explain what the reasoning was to lower the existing pad?
The reason for lowering part obviously was to avoid to be higher than our neighbor on the back. If you look in the plans, you will see that we are like 6 inch to 1 foot, 1.5 foot, depending on, this is the highest roof. This is the lower roof. This one is about, I would say, 3 feet, 3.5 feet lower. This one is only 6 inch to 1 foot lower than the pad on the on the back. So this is why we
The
cut this.
reason that I'm asking is that I was actually went around to understand what's going on. I walked back of the neighbor, and I took photos, and I asked Jay to print that. The flags are actually above the railing. I have the photo. He's going to print it. So that's why I asked if they were certified. Those flags were certified. And the way that it's showing the grade, and I was standing there, I was like, you can see the flags. So I'm not understanding the reasoning behind lowering the building where it's already projecting up. So
May I ask if you were looking from down towards up?
I was in I was in their backyard, took pictures.
Neighbor's backyard here? And the flags are higher than the railing?
Yeah.
We have numbers. I have the certificate of
Well, I mean,
the person who installed those, and the numbers, heights exactly accurately shows that we are 6 inch to 1 foot at this location and about 3 foot lower at this location. I have a copy of it and I will.
well, I'm sure they're right, but I mean the photos are. I sent. Oh,
Sorry. That's what I was.
I saw it from the street, but I didn't see the thing from the
That's in
street.
line with the railing.
These are the numbers that you can compare to the site plan and see the elevations.
okay, I'll go ahead and send this so we can print it and have it at record.
I have this number here that the looking from the street on the left side neighbor finish level is 1148.4. Now what you have there is I believe 1147 something. So we are inches lower than the pad of these two houses.
We have any other questions?
Mr. Hagopian, about the driveway. This is a whole new driveway, correct?
I forgot to explain that driveway. May I approach?
Sure.
and- Okay, since we lowered the pad, the existing driveway was not proper for that. And since we were trying to have a retaining wall to support the driveway, we shifted the driveway from wherever it is. Let me show you here. We shifted this driveway a little bit to the left with a new driveway.
Any other questions?
To Mr. Hagopian, this new chart you gave me, these are not in this neighborhood key, correct?
This is outside
This is outside? Go ahead.
Excuse me. Those houses
outside
are not in 300 or 500 foot radius, but they are beyond that and the same neighborhood.
Same neighborhood, yeah.
I'm sorry, Mr. Govian. These numbers 1147.59, 1147.76, those are top of. It says elevations are now top of the pole. Are the top of the poles, not the flag? So the top of poles are the roof line, or what?
Top of the poles are the roof line. Maybe flags are a little bit bended. That's
Okay,
because he's mentioning that.
Okay.
Anyway, if you can look into plans and elevations, we have numbers there that it shows the elevation of the house. So we can compare it to the page number to this page.
Yeah.
There it shows the neighbor's elevation on their backyard.
Just the section that was showing the green line is just confusing because that should be. There's a railing and there's other things that are not shown properly, so that's why I'm trying to understand. Okay.
Okay, do we have any other?
No,
We
side
work very
window.
hard to stay lower than the neighbor's backyard, for sure.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Next speaker I have is Eugene Smith. Not here? Oh, he's. please state your name and address for the record, please.
Board members, thank you for having me. My name is Eugene Smith, and I live at 335 Wonderview Drive. That's Lot 6 of Tract 28922. And our house is directly across the street from 330 Wonderview Drive, which is Lot 24 of Tract 28922. And for the record, we strongly oppose the proposed building project. And our opposition is based on the engineering, regulation, and legal precedents that has been developed over the past 25 years regarding this tract. The engineering, regulation, and legal precedents over the last 25 years dictates that any new development should conform to the 52 conditions under which Tract 28922 was originally granted by the City of Glendale. We emphasize that point because the lots were developed and the houses were built to allow unobstructed views. These are regulatory obligations we strongly urge you to uphold. We bought Lot 6 in 1969 from Carl McGinn, the developer of the tract. We acquired the property based on the assurance of an unobstructed view lot, and the homes could not be built on fill slopes. To support that position, I have attached copies of the declaration of 8 residents of Wonderview Drive. Each resident's declaration affirms that each homeowner was assured that their lot was a view lot and no houses could be built on the fill slopes. Those declarations were submitted earlier. Lot 24 is a large lot, 2.3 acres. A considerable amount of money invested in topographic surveys of this property, most of which is not required for the lot or the house, suggests that re-subdivision of this lot was perhaps the intent of the builders, or the owners. Maybe it still is. And if it is the future intent to re-subdivide, we strongly oppose such further re-subdivision. Proposals to re-subdivide lots of Tract 28922 is not a new issue. John Bonino, myself, and others have submitted many position statements over the past 25 years in regards to this problem. The basic position of those statements is that it was never the intent of the City of Glendale to allow homes to be built on the fill slopes. The City of Glendale confirmed that position in May 1996 in its denial of vesting tentative parcel map number GLN 1596. We refer you to a attached copy of that resolution, of that motion, I should say. We also refer you to the staff report on vesting tentative parcel map Glendale 1596 to the Planning Commission, prepared by Kimberly Christina Manjaras, dated February 7, 1996. The report includes a Planning Commission document which states it was never the intent to permit engineering slopes to be split off for the use of housing. A review of the file of this tract shows that the principal concern of the City of Glendale Planning Commission was that the fill slopes of the tract be maintained, actually planted, watered, and maintained. And I stress the point of maintained. These fill slot areas remain an essential part of the tract's flood control system and slope stability. With the exception of the developer, Mr. McGinn, the fill slope lot of Lot 22 has never been maintained.
Excuse me, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap it up a little because your time is up.
I can't hear you.
I'm going to have to ask you to wrap it up. Your time is
Yes,
up,
okay.
so please.
It continues to be overgrown with brush and is a fire hazard. The flood control channels contain debris, landslide material, which limits their ability to control flooding and fill erosion. Although the proposed mansion is a single-family home, it could hold many people based upon its size and its four-car garage. And it may not provide a lot of local traffic. But again, but Wonderview is not a large street, only 32 feet wide. But my principal concern is Nolan. Nolan is an old street dating back to the 1920s,
I'm sorry, I'm going to
and
have
it
to
varies
cut, I'm
from
gonna have to cut
24
you
to
off.
31 feet.
I'm going to have to cut you off,
All right.
okay?
The gentleman over there went for a long time.
Yep,
And
I understand.
as a
but-
resident, I have a personal concern
Well, I understand
in
you
this
have
matter.
3
If
minutes.
you have someone in the audience who has filled out a speaker card, they may
Okay, I'll
continue your
summarize.
presentation.
May I
Go
summarize?
ahead, go ahead.
The tract 28922 was granted subject to certain conditions. The existing homeowners bought their homes subject to those conditions. All buyers should conform to those conditions. The city of Glendale should conform to the regulatory conditions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have Tom Garson.
Good afternoon, Chair, Board, staff. First, I'd like to acknowledge and thank Valia, who's been very
Could you
responsive.
give your name and address for the record?
Yes, ma'am. I'm Tom Garson. I'm an attorney. I represent the owner of 300 Wonderview Drive. My address is 995 East Green Street in Pasadena. And I did first want to thank Valia because she has been kind enough to send me information very quickly by email, and I don't get that type of cooperation normally from cities, so I did want to point that out. As I said, my client owns the property at 300 Wonderview Drive, which
Which one is that exactly?
that is the one with the dark-colored roof, about 40 feet above the project site.
Got it.
That's what I'm circling here.
Yes, exactly.
Got it.
That's 300.
Thank you.
My client's main concern at this point is the dust that's going to be raised from the construction and the demolition of the existing house. Just the day before yesterday, I got the city's computer modeling studies of the air quality impacts that this project is going to have. And it shows that there's going to be approximately 12 pounds per day of dust being thrown into the air from the project for a period of about 8 weeks. The dust is referred to as fugitive dust, and it's particulate matter 10 microns, so it's very, very small, and it's just basically dust. That's going to go up into the air and settle on my client's property. There's just no place else for it to go. It's going to end up in her backyard and migrate into her house, and frankly, because of her age, her allergies, and her existing medical condition, she is highly susceptible to that dust. Southern California Air Quality Management District says that even an aggressive dust mitigation program, such as watering the construction site every 3 hours, only eliminates 60% of PM10 dust. So even if that's done, we're still looking at 5 pounds of dust per day for 8 weeks going into the air, potentially affecting the health of my client. In addition, it appears that the city's computer modeling also is at or near the localized significant threshold using the latest methodologies approved by AQMD in 2005. Now, since there's no dust mitigation detail in the negative declarations before you today, we really don't know what the impact is going to be. We don't know, for example, what type of dust suppressants would be required, if there would be a dust control supervisor, if demolition and grading might be suspended during windy conditions. We just don't know. So at this point, my client can't really adequately address what her potential impact to your property or her health might be. Now, you may have heard, and your staff may even tell you, that the California Environmental Quality Act, of which this negative declaration is a part, was enacted to quantify and determine the impacts of a project on the environment, and that's correct. However, in the case of Sierra Club versus County of Fresno, which was decided in the California Court of Appeal just last May, it was determined that the CEQA Act also applies to the health of individuals. In that case, an environmental impact report was overturned because it merely quantified the air quality impacts. I should say the air quality quantification numbers were all that was included in the EIR. It did not take into account the impact of that air quality problem on the neighbors. So the court overturned the entire EIR. I'm glad that Board Member Malekian also brought up the flag issue. I've been in the backyard of 300 Wonderview Drive hundreds of times, probably over the years. I also have pictures from there, and the flags to me look like they're well above the railing as well. So that's certainly a question in my mind. But clearly the main problem for my client's property being so close to the project area, it's about 40 feet away, is the dust that's going to be generated from this that's shown in the city zone studies. I'm sure there's a solution to this. I'm sure we can work it out. But at this point, we just don't have enough information about what's happening on that site. And if this gets approved, frankly, I just can't see this going anywhere except to seek remediation. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a question for
ahead.
staff. Is there any way we can get a legal representation for us and to understand what the ramifications of these EIR and what it's been indicated versus what it was just indicated to us by the neighbors from city legal side? I mean,
And I want to join on that because I actually had that written down here as one of the questions I was going to ask. Also, I would wonder if the motion that Mr. Smith mentioned that was enacted in 1996 as to what kind of development that was that the city basically indicated could not go forth. I can't tell from the motion, and I don't know if it's because I don't know when we got this, if city staff has addressed
As presented by Mr. Smith, it sounded like he was talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, further subdivision of the site.
That's right.
Which they believe is a potential possibility, but at this point, it's not part of the proposal, and we cannot consider it as part of the proposal.
Actually, would you mind if I?
Sure.
The case that Mr. Smith was referring to was a vested tentative tract parcel map, GLN 1596, which was submitted to the to the Planning Commission, and then ultimately denied by the City Council back in 1996. This was actually for the not for the subject parcel. It was actually for the subject parcel next to the 300. Wonderview Drive. If you don't mind, I have one copy of it. It would be for the larger project.
Gotcha. I understand.
This is in regards to the subdivision of the adjacent parcel. And
Gotcha.
so
This is
that,
next to
that-
the 300?
Correct.
I see.
And that, and if you'll notice
Okay.
here, the subdivision of the neighboring parcel was denied back in 1996 by City Council. And there was quite a bit of discussion in regards to that subdivision. As you'll notice, there is no subdivision plan for for the subject parcel under today's discussion. It is a 2.3 acre project site. They are only proposing one single-family residential dwelling unit on the site. There is no proposal to subdivide the subject property. But again, the comments that were made and the
I think
the information that was handed out was in regards to an adjacent proposed subdivision
nothing
of
to
an
do with this.
adjacent
Yeah, okay.
parcel.
Yeah.
Correct.
The fact that it's adjacent makes it moot, but the motion itself has broad implications that if it was for this particular parcel, I'd want it to be considered by council before I was comfortable proceeding. But it looks like it's been addressed by staff.
It's been addressed by staff, yes.
Follow up your, Mayor?
With regards to Mr. Malikian's request, I would be more than happy to go ahead and have our legal counsel take a look at the negative declaration that was prepared. I know that Eric Kraus, our in-house environmental expert, was the one who actually ran the model numbers. They are below the threshold that would deem this project of a significant nature. There is no mitigation measures required based on staff's preparation of this negative declaration. Staff is comfortable in moving forward. At least I'm not familiar with the case law. I am not going to represent myself as an attorney by any means.
To me, and so it's just more of for me to be at ease and understanding what we're talking about. So,
but we have it in our draft report, the air quality. It says, less than significant, no impact.
It would be less than significant because, again, based on the model numbers that were run, it doesn't exceed the threshold limit.
Okay.
Had it exceeded the threshold limit, there would have been mitigation measures put in place. At this point in time, you have the BMPs, the best management practices, which would essentially be, watering down dust, making sure that, during construction, during high winds, construction is ceased. And there are procedures put in place for best management practices in dealing with dust control. Those would be applied in this case.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tim Berry?
Hello, thank you for having me. My name's Tim Berry. I live at 1940 McGinn Drive, which is down below this whole situation. And just to address that sort of subdivision breaking up thing, that other case.
You need to point and walk back because no one can hear you.
Yeah, you point where you want. I'll point to it and you talk to us.
Well, that house with the orange roof.
Right here?
That whole sweeping area, I believe, was the subject of that. And while, yes, there's been no request to chop up this particular lot, the reasons that was designed, I believe, set precedent because look at the whole big picture. It's all part of this conical-shaped hillside, steep hillside, and the reasons they denied it were probably appropriate for the building and grading of this new place. That's not my pitch. A couple things were mentioned. I may not be going in order, and I will pass this around and I will give it to you. It was mentioned that the existing trees in that area hide this house from the street. Not true. That's the view from my yard. It's clearly open right up to it. And when I look up there and I see these flags fluttering and blowing, which describe, I believe, the roof line and the some extent of this building, Carnival Circus comes to mind. This is clearly spectacular. It's spectacular. No question. I could see this on a ranch somewhere out in the mountains in Colorado. And look, you have 2.3 acres. Well, you could have horses out there and everything, but no, this space, this hillside, it's not walkable, it's not usable. Look at the proportion of the building pad on that picture with the white and the green. You have a little patch of usable space. The rest of it, you couldn't walk there, you couldn't do anything there. To say that this is on a 2.3 acre lot makes it sound like it's a really big, nice, big space. It's not. You've got a little patch of land, and also going back to my picture, just conspicuous by its absence. I don't know if you can see this. May I approach? Conspicuous by its absence is any sort of part of the roof line of the existing house. How nice that is that it just kind of slides right in there, and you got your trees, and you got your ground, and you got trees and everything. You don't see something like this. I want to talk to the language in this own thing that says proposed additional grading and lowering. He's already admitted that the thing's too big. He wants to grade that down so it drops the profile down, and it says. So that the new two-story structure would appear less perched on top of the knoll. I got news for you. They should add the word precarious. This thing is perched precariously up to the edge of this. Not only to the edge, but beyond this pool thing. I got to tell you, there's a phenomenon that happens in this what do you call it? Amphitheater-shaped area here. Sound is captured and amplified in that whole area. We have neighbors who party up and down the streets above us, and it all kind of congregates down at my house down there.
So you're going to have to speak into the microphone.
Down where you see the swimming pool. they're going to put a pool, again, my picture, there's going to be a pool deck right here in the middle of this hillside? I mean, really? Just because it can be done, and I grant this is spectacular architecture, but because it can be done doesn't mean it should be done. It's not appropriate for the neighborhood. I don't know where he came up with the statistics for the large houses, but if you drive anywhere on those streets, you're not going to see any frontage that's even close to that. My time? Am I okay?
Still orange, so you're...
Oh, great. 1 minute.
Nope.
Now you're
actually done.
Well,
Get better luck in Vegas.
well, just let me say that the impact to Wonderview is not the significant impact except to the neighbors whose view will be blocked. I've walked up there all the time, and you can see those flags from the street. You know that those houses are going to lose the view. Not my problem. But the problem is from the downside, from the bottom again, and all the houses down in there, you're going to look up and you're going to see this thing looming, and it's not appropriate for the neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Stephen Reidinger?
Good evening. My name's Stephen Reidinger. I'm the homeowner my wife and I are the homeowner at 230 Wonderview Drive in Glendale, not to be confused with 330, the project address. And before I read my statement or comments, if I could show you where my house is located, and a picture's worth 1,000 words as far as I'm concerned. If you had it there before. Okay. This is my house right here, and I own property from here going all the way down to the street, and I own the property. My property line runs down right there.
Okay.
Anyhow, it shares a boundary with the projected property, and they're running a pipeline with about a 6-inch ID.
You have to talk a bit.
This is actually back in 19.
Right. So I'm primarily concerned about the safety to my property and the property below me, which is owned by Ed Kordagian, who lives at 1949 McGinn, who is directly below me on McGinn Drive. The project in question, their sort of slapdash jerry-rigged drainage system right now drains and washes across my property, washing dirt and mud and silt down the hill to the bottom of the hill into the backyard of 19949. And it's not just a little mud, it's dump truck loads full of mud. And it's very expensive to clean out of there. And it wouldn't be happening if they weren't using the runoff, the drainage for the runoff down that driveway, and whether they've got the pool or their gutters tied into it as well, I don't know. I haven't been on their property. But I've been on my property around the backside, and there's the white pipe that I showed you, that's just an accordion plastic thing with holes in it. And there's also a black pipe that comes out of that backyard and just drains apparently right out onto the ground. If you go around their backyard, which nobody probably wants to do because it's rough and steep and raw land there, that hose has been moved before and washed out large sections of earth up there. So I'm concerned about the future drainage. And in this staff report, I see talk about irrigation. I don't see any talk about drainage for that property. Valia did say it would be addressed, in a report down the line, when they account for grading or whatever. But if they're going to drop the property pad, the angle is going to be even steeper, I would suppose, on that driveway, running more water at higher speeds down into their drain system. So I'm not only worried about it in the future, I'm worried about under construction, what are they going to do with that drainage? I want them draining and so does my neighbor below me, Ed Kordagian at 1949 McGinn. We would like their drainage drained away from our properties, which means having a drain line going down to McGinn or however they want to do it. So those are my concerns, and it's for safety of our property. As far as what color they want to paint it or whether they... all of that is meaningless. I just want the integrity of both of our lots at 1949 McGinn and 230 Wonderview, the integrity of those properties maintained. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Marilyn Wickman.
Good evening. Marilyn Wickman, 1991 McGinn Drive. I probably am the most impacted by this project than anyone here. And it's been conveniently overlooked on my property and my neighbor next door, Cesar Caniva. We're right below the project, the hill, and that hill dumps into the driveway of Mr. Caniva. And where you're pointing, would you continue pointing there?
Certainly.
That swimming pool that you see is my swimming pool. And this house would completely take away our privacy. And all I would look at, as I've been in my pool or in the jacuzzi, is a 7-foot wall of along the driveway and a hill coming down. We also have all of the concrete swale drains. The one drain below this hill comes into Mr. Caniva's property, drains into it, all the dirt, everything drains down, and then onto McGinn Drive. And on my side is another drain that comes down, and we had to build a concrete wall and drain because when it rains, all of this property, all of those drains that are contributed by this property drain into our property. Had we not put that wall up, it completely would be filled with mud from the drain. I just wanted to, I was going over your list, I'd like to read, and what I'm addressing is there are no houses on either side of the existing building pad and the proposed residence, nor directly below on McGinn Drive. Well, obviously, we're right below on McGinn Drive. The closest neighbors are the two homes directly north on the above street, Wonderview, and two houses on the southwest, and so on, and well below McGinn. Due to the slope and topography of the lot, the proposed residence is not expected to have views directly into the properties on McGinn. It does. It looks directly into my property. Not that I go out in the pool or the jacuzzi without a bathing suit on. To have something like this size overlooking our house and the parties that they obviously will be carrying on would be a nightmare in our neighborhood and our property. And unfortunately, Mr. Caniva couldn't be here. And he is the most directly, because that's the bottom of that hill. And the fact, we built this house and the one at 1949 back in 1960-something. My son was a baby. Okay, I won't continue on that. But anyhow, the fact of looking at a wall along there and the impact that it has on our privacy is a nightmare.
Okay, thank you very much. That is all of the cards I have. Does the architect wish to come up and answer any of those questions?
I would like to ask for a continuation of this project. So, because I want to make sure that when they claim that we are intruding in their privacy, I didn't see that several times that I was there, because this perspective that we see is from a very high position. We are much lower than that. I don't know. If you allow me to, I mean, if you can, this project can be continuous, I can, first of all, check the flags and the highest point to make sure that it's done right. Second, I will take some more photos to make sure that we really encroach or to their privacy. I don't see that. Now, obviously, this property, the way it is now, it is not taken care of. It doesn't have a engineered drainage. Was built many years ago. When this house is built, we'll have engineered drainage, and it will be much more safer than what it is today. Now,
Can I ask you,
yes.
have you had the opportunity to speak with any of the neighbors?
No, we didn't. I have a bad experience about that because we have another project that several times we approach to the neighbors. Sometimes they don't want to come and speak.
Okay.
Any questions?
I had a question, Mr. Since whether we continue or not, we'll discuss that. Why grade it 4 feet? Because I see your sections, the elevations, your ceiling heights are at 10. There some places are maybe, but there you have at least 2 feet that you could drop the building. And you will avoid all this, substantial grading that's taking place. I mean, aside, because when I'm looking at this pad, the existing pad, and I'm looking at the previous house that is located on there, you're really not gaining much pad.
This is what is happening.
Aside from the back neighbor.
We are gaining about 10 feet deeper pad because we are taking 5 feet of about 4.5 feet of the dirt. So in a slope it becomes bigger. Then we put a retaining wall there, 5 feet retaining wall, another 5 feet we gain there. Overall we gain about 9 to 10 feet. So one of the gentlemen mentioned that we are at the edge of the slope, the flat pad. We are not. Because of that grading that we have, our flat pad is bigger. We have enough proper setback from the edge, so we can walk around that, and that's a fire department requirement. And
because I'm looking at the sections, I don't see you're gaining 9 feet. You could come up here if you want.
Yeah.
But this is your existing pad, and this is the area that you're dropping. So I'm only gaining 5 feet, or whatever you have here.
We are putting a retaining wall. This is not that location. In this location here, see, in this location here, by putting the retaining wall here, we are gaining not only this becomes this. So if this is like 3 feet or 2 feet, it becomes 10 feet.
In certain areas, obviously not in that section that you're discussing.
Our cut is parallel to these contours.
Yeah, I get that. I get that.
Exactly.
I
It's
get that.
uniformly getting bigger.
Any more questions for Mr. Hagobian?
No, I'm okay.
Okay, I'm going to close the session and open it up. Is this a possibility to continue this? Is this something that we would even consider?
If the board feels that that additional information is necessary for you to render a decision, yes, you may continue. If not, then you may proceed.
Well, if the applicant is
I have my
uncomfortable.
comments. I have my thoughts and my. It could be that continuing may not.
I don't want to get into a full discussion, but I think some information to the applicant would be helpful.
But he wants to continue to make sure that the encroachment and other things.
I don't think that's enough.
Well, I think the point was to continue it so he can determine the privacy issue that the neighbor is concerned. Am I correct? I don't think. Certifying the story poles
It's
have an
already
issue with you brought
stamped,
up.
so I'm
Yeah.
assuming that
I
it
don't
is
think I'll
correct.
have an issue with that. I mean, I was up there from both ends. I do feel it's a little higher or close to the railing. I don't think we should continue it for that
Right.
part. But if
So
we
then-
want
Comment.
to continue it for the other purpose,
That's for
that will satisfy all both sides. And maybe, I'm just throwing this out. I know Mr. Agopian said he hasn't had good experience meeting the neighbors. Maybe this is a good opportunity for him to also to visit the concerned party and look at it from there. Maybe he'll get a better picture of the. But I'll leave it.
I mean, we can start discussing about the project if you like, or do you
I
want
just
to?
think other issues are going to come up, and maybe he would have to come back again and say, I want to
Right.
study this. So I would like to go through and make the comments, and then have him take that back, and if necessary. Is that agreeable? Or?
I would agree, Madam Chairwoman. I think that we can probably address some of those concerns with some conditions on return. Verification of the story poles would be one of the things that I would be looking for. We visit the site, and I understand the neighbors' comments because the project with the cut is designed to lower its profile, yet the profile looks intimidating, is the word I would use, from certain vantage points. So we should maybe address it through some conditions.
What do you want to go ahead and start?
Go ahead. Okay. So when I had a chance to go around the block again and go up and took some photos, and I went around and knocked on the door. I actually walked down the driveway, went down and tried to understand the whole idea about redoing the driveway and sloping the driveway further than what it is now. The issue that I was kind of baffled about was, and I couldn't understand, was I was looking at the drawings and it showed that there was a grading to be proposed and lowering the pad, but at the end of the day, it's creating a flat site and a hillside, where now you have the opportunity to work with some of these contours, some of the elevations. And this is a photo that I took when I was there. So it could be level. Maybe I'm standing, I'm a 5'8", standing, about 20 feet back from the fence. But as I walk closer to the fence, you can literally, I could, if I was daring enough, I can leap over and grab one of those flagpoles. It's very close and very tall, in my opinion. I'm not talking about shedding view, but in overall, I think that when you're proposing the largest house in the neighborhood, you cannot make that to be tucked against the hillside. That it's you can't turn back against two other homes that are impacted so greatly with this project, especially when you're proposing to demo the building and lower the grade. I don't know why the proposal wasn't in a way that the existing pad would remain, the first existing level of the house will remain as the height, and if you're going to regrade that, just dig into the dirt and lower, take out the dirt. We don't have any issue of grading, amount of cubic yards being removed. But at the end of the day, when you're removing about 1,600 cubic yards and then you're back to square one again, and yet much larger structure than what you end up with, I think there's a good opportunity there to keep the driveway as it slopes, leave the same pad elevation, keep the existing height level as the first top or the second level, and dig under. You can tear the house down and rebuild it, obviously, but that should be the first approach that I would take, rather than lower it and raise it up. Another issue that I have is that looking at that, you're going to stand, and essentially that backyard is going to be facing a rooftop. So how is that rooftop going to be addressed, and especially when you have two large skylights, even though it's on the front end of that? And this is a new terminology, I guess I want to bring up, but it's common in City of Los Angeles, but it hasn't been brought up here. Light pollution. A project that I went through in Mulholland area, and one of the biggest issues that I had to face with was light pollution. That we were on it was a downhill side, a project, and we had a skylight. And one of the biggest concerns about the neighbors were at night when the lights come on, you have these lights coming through the skylight, even though but what it's going to do is the houses above, the brighter the light that you're looking at, it blocks the entire, you're just basically shining light up against, and that's all you're going to, a flashlight, exactly. Yeah. So that's another, even though it's not a code issue, it's not a, zoning issue or anything, that's my personal issue, that I think a skylight being placed on a flat roof, that it's almost level with the backyard of another house, I think we need to be very cautious about what we're going to propose and what we're going to be placed in there, especially that you're building the largest house. I understand that there's portion of it is in the basement, a portion of it is a garage that it's taking square footage out. But again, the mass, the height, the 13-foot high mass, and all of those does not make it look like a 6,000. It doesn't make it look like an 8,000 square foot house. So if it's going to be proposed as the largest home by square footage, both massing and number-wise, I think a little bit more needs to be placed into the design idea so that it makes a little bit better sense of what's being proposed.
Mr. Charchian?
In the interest of time, I'm going to join in all those comments because I do agree. I will add that the idea of scaling down and building up with the story poles I saw out there didn't make sense, and I think that needs to be revisited. I would like the applicant to provide some more detail on the cut for the pool area. I know that's under separate approval, but the cut is an hillside cut is to the discretion of our board.
Correct.
So we need to address that and take that matter seriously. And aside from that, on the light pollution thing, maybe that will come to the city of Glendale one day or another, but it's not just the nighttime issues. We have several rooftops. From my office, you can see several rooftops that have these triangular type of glass roofs that are commercial buildings, one of them being the Nordstrom Rack Plaza area. And there's reflection issues too from those, so that I think those need to be thought through as well, given the fact that this is a triangular skylight. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay, Mardian?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I concur with my colleagues. I'm going to discuss a little bit compatibility. Although the applicant's wishes is to have a large house, that's fine. But I don't think recreating a new pad is the right direction. I think they could achieve the square footage by keeping the pad the same, because I see the ceiling heights could be reduced, even if necessary to grade a foot to make things work. But I think what's happening in this case, and I want to be frank and say this, we're creating this flat pad. And it doesn't go with our hillside design guidelines. I really went today and read the hillside design guidelines again. That's why I asked really earlier about this being a transitional slope. As I recall, years ago when these properties were subdivided, they created these transition slopes so nobody would build on it. It was just to ease off the flow. And also these curvatures they've created is for, preservation of the view for the neighbors who are living on the other side of the street. I think it's beautifully designed, but I don't think it belongs on this particular site. If it stays this way, you could achieve the square footage, but I think we're going against our hillside guidelines. I have agreed with staff on a lot of projects, and I respect Mr. Hagopian. He's done good work over the years, but I agree on the fact that I think also one of the speakers mentioned that this is not the, it's, to me it's perching over there, it's hovering in the hill. You could see it clearly from, again, by adding the pool and the deck even further goes against our hillside. And one of my concerns that I'm having is, in our guidelines, it's very specific. Site plan development property slopes shall take account the visual impact on the surrounding neighborhood. I think by creating this, I think it creates a visual impact. And mass and scale could be redefined. I mean, my concern is grading the pad. And hillside homes should adhere to our hillside guidelines. Like I said, I mean, it's clear that it's a large home, but it could be reduced. The argument that we're reducing it 4.5 feet to stay away from the neighbor's view, I think it could be achieved without creating a new pad. And those are my comments.
Well, I agree with all the comments made, but additionally, when that pad is pushed down, now we've created a flatter site, and there are retaining walls from 5 to 9 feet to 11 feet around the entire perimeter, around the pool area, both sides of the driveway. And I don't think the intent of the hillside guidelines is to create something like that. It's to have it step gradually down so it doesn't make a big impact. In this particular house, the tallest part of the roof is out by the slope area. And when the pool goes down there, it sticks further out. Where says they're going to landscape, now that it's been graded, that slope is so steep, none of this landscape, or a very small portion, is going to be able to grow because it's on such a steep slope. And some of the trees where the pool is going that are existing now are going to be taken out in order to get the pool. So that view up from the lower street is going to be looking at a large project. So I think it really needs to be restudied and try to eliminate a good portion of the retaining walls. And I think that's my comments.
If I may add, Madam Chair, I mean, I'm looking at the site plan and also the grading plan. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of greenery shown, but there's no green on the pad. I mean, this is just basically all...
But the green on the slope is not there either. It's not a slope that's plantable.
Yeah. Well, it should
just
be...
open space.
It's open space, really. And by creating this, I mean, you're coming to the edge of the toe of the slope. And also we're creating, like you said, the retaining walls. Then I have cantilever decks coming out. I mean, all these things are going to be exposed from the bottom. And those are my concerns. I'm not so much concerned he wants to put a 6,000, 5,000. If he can make it work, so be it. But we need to be...
Shouldn't look like this.
Shouldn't look like this. When I'm looking at the perspective, this belongs on a flat property. In some other setting, not necessarily here. Maybe there's homes further up before you get to this, which have similar, but and that's why we're trying to avoid not doing the same thing.
Right.
And without it,
We want to summarize what we have so far?
Let me, before I summarize, just ask if the board, since we'll be moving forward not just on some of the site planning issues, but also as the house is redesigned, some of the aesthetic design issues, is the board content with the proposed design and some of the detailing, assuming that that will linger through a redesign? Do you have any thoughts on the design aspects?
Well, it's going to change if it's lowered. I think the design is a nice design, but not for this particular site.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure there weren't any specific thoughts or issues.
So the designs are nice. They're, I would say, very, very well thought out for what I think they were trying to achieve. But I don't think that the board is okay with it being on a non-terraced lot.
Okay, so
design-wise, I have no concerns.
Okay. Can we entertain a question for staff? No, between. We're going to have to work on that. Would you like to, the architect has a question for the board if you want to reopen the hearing?
Sure. Come on up.
I don't know if the owner will agree. I will recommend him to agree. I don't know if he will agree. Let's say we take the upper level and go down. It will have windows in the slope. Is that okay?
I don't think it's just the upper level. I think it's the whole widening of the pad and creating more retaining walls. And
there will be no
projecting out
retaining walls anymore in the facade. The facade will be a facade of the rooms downstairs facing the...
I think you would have to redesign that to show us.
I will redesign, but I don't want to go back and forth without knowing the concept, what the concept
Trying
is.
to get with that.
Yeah. So just to clarify, what you're saying, Mr. Hagopian, is that if you keep the first level at the current level of the pad, more or less, so that you're not having to redo the driveway, which is where a lot of the retaining wall issues are, and then drop the front portion of the house.
I take the bedrooms, I put it under. So my lower level will have exposed window. Is this something? Because when we were working with Vilya and Jay for a long, long time, they were telling us that we have to stay away from the edge of the slope. But by doing this new concept, then the fenestration of the lower level will be towards the
Like
view.
where the pool is.
The pool is in a lower level.
I think he's saying move the second floor to a level below the existing first floor level on the pad.
Next to the pool. Yeah.
That would be the level where the pool is.
No, pool is by far less.
He's talking about excavating into the site.
He excavates in here or whatever he does in here, correct?
May I come close and show it?
Yeah.
If I take these bedrooms and put it here,
Well, that's where we go.
yeah, all windows will be exposed. Is that okay?
Is there any code issues or anything like that for that?
I don't think the code is an issue.
I was asking you to say
Is that excess grading or?
There is no. Well, and again, the additional grading would have to be considered by the design review board. But if that is a direction you think that the house would be more compatible with regards to maintaining the existing building pad, maintaining a one-story structure on the existing building pad and building underneath, there is a precedence in this particular, in the history of DRB, which was a very controversial case at 1749 Allen Avenue, that actually was resolved using this same solution and ultimately approved by City Council. So we do have an example that can be shown to the architect, in which case it was successfully addressed by having the living rooms, the public spaces on the first floor, and then building the bedrooms into the ground floor.
To give you a little a little guidance on that, I would want to see the cantilevering decks on the pool area reduced in depth, so that there's not, when you're on, again, looking up, you're not seeing this, 5-6 foot, 11 foot.
That's a minor thing.
Coming out.
Swimming pool is secondary, but
it is a concern.
what is important? Yeah, I understand. I'll
For
take
me,
care
it's a
of
major
it.
concern, because
I
the
understand
neighbors
that.
the people away from there are going to be seeing a monolithic structure, and one of those elements is that pool.
I understand that. I will take care of it. But I want to have a concept, not to go back and forth again, come here and say, no, this is not what we wanted.
They have a pool a couple doors down from this project that is projecting like that, and that was a big problem with the city. So
I have no problem with the pool.
Okay.
The main issue is the house. If that idea, if I take the upper level and put underneath and have this.
but it is all tied together, so. But I think what we're saying is we would encourage you to explore that.
Maybe our first floor can be a little bit higher even. Half and half, kind of 2 or 3 feet higher than what it is now, so that we can have the lower level.
We're encouraging you to explore that.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so the conditions that we've heard, the primary condition is to retain the level of the existing pad more or less within a foot or so that we don't encroach on the neighbors above, as much as it appears is happening today. We will verify the story poles of the new design when it returns to the board to ensure that they're accurate. We will, if a skylight remains in the proposal, we will make sure that it is either shielded or protected in some way so that it doesn't either cause reflections or spread light up onto adjacent properties. The pool area, the deck of the pool area will be reduced in size so that it doesn't cantilever off the hill as much, and we will also get more information on whatever cut or fill is required for that section of the project. We will carefully look at the landscape to make sure that anything that is proposed will grow on a steep slope, otherwise...
Well, in his new approach, he might consider doing some large pockets and including retaining walls as part of that lower area so you can get some trees and things hanging over that would grow in 4 or 5 feet of level soil, like a perimeter.
Okay, so we'll look into introducing pockets created by retaining walls to enhance the landscaping around the base of the project and mitigate views of it from below. And unless Amelia, do you have anything else?
I can add one more thing that may help. I would suggest and consider the idea of keeping the existing ridge height as a datum point for the upper or the topmost height of the building.
The existing what height?
Ridge height.
Of
the existing house. Use that as a datum point.
Okay, that may not be exactly fair, only because it's considerably lower than the houses above, and it's a very low pitched.
I mean, I'm
roof,
just
almost a flat roof when you're at the site.
Yeah, I mean,
I think what he's saying is we don't want to see 2 feet below.
No. I think we understand.
I don't want to come back and say, you know, this is the grade and this is the roof.
The goal is to have.
There's quite a bit of difference between the existing roof. I mean, you can stand there and look down; it's there.
A story.
A story, at least a story down below, and you know, a foot or two below that level won't make a difference for me.
Right, but I think Mr. Agopian talked about splitting the difference and maybe having it be 1.5 stories above the pad now and then another half story below, so that we have a significant reduction in height by the number of feet.
And by doing that, he could probably increase a little bit on the first level from the 10 feet, but bring that difference.
The existing ridge height, whatever it is, even if you're at an 8-foot plate height, existing ridge height would be somewhere around 11, 12 feet. So having an 11, 12 feet of a floor height is more than enough, in my opinion. But and again, they're the ones who are.
A flat roof, yeah.
I mean, that's a huge number. I mean, what do you want, a 17-foot? You know, so I don't know what that is. But even if you go based on an 8-foot plate height, you have a slope that goes up. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying the highest point of the ridge. We use that as a flat point.
We can certainly do that, and it may lead to more excavation for the floor below, but that's something you'll consider.
I don't think it'll be more than 4 feet of entire pad and driveway.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I didn't mention when we were talking about retaining the existing pad is part of the goal of retaining the pad is to maintain the existing driveway.
Right.
So that we don't have to have.
But does the current driveway meet our standards? I mean,
not sure.
I think it needs some.
It was fine. I walked down.
Yeah.
And I didn't
because
roll
this
down.
is a new house.
It's a new driveway.
Yeah.
Just.
Okay.
Well,
I mean,
if the driveway has to be altered, we could add to the condition that alterations to the driveway be minimized to only address code. And that was everything that I had.
Also, it appears that the board is so inclined that you are going to return the project for redesign.
I thought we were going to continue it with these comments.
Oh,
I don't.
Well, you wouldn't be able to continue it for this type of information. This would be
More
definitely.
information.
That's
we need.
why I thought that we were entertaining the continuance.
I thought we moved beyond that before. So.
Okay.
I would think we're going for
I think
redesign.
continuation would be just an information that we
Correct.
but-
Continuation is only for additional information.
More than that.
Okay.
We can ask for that information as part of the next
Correct.
round.
You want us to make a motion? Or?
Well, actually, what I wanted to comment on was the fact that if the board intends to return the project for redesign, the board does not have to act on the negative declaration, in which case staff can then consult with our legal
Please.
counsel to discuss the case that was mentioned during the testimony with regards to the air quality, and that way
It'll
we
be
can
good for us to know as well.
we
what
can
the
present that
limitations are.
information to the board when the project returns for.
And the light information.
Yes.
Madam Chair.
I don't know about the light. I mean, would that be part of the
I mean,
environmental?
it's worth looking at.
Yes. So we can go ahead and address light and the air quality.
Can I add something else also?
So you,
In the sections, I'd like to see the houses above, profile of the homes above.
That would be fine.
So can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to return for redesign
For a
with the
second?
conditions.
I'll second.
I have a motion to return for redesign, a motion made by Board Member Mardian, a second by Board Member Malikian. In terms of a roll call, Board Member Charchin,
Yes.
Board Member Mardian,
Yes.
Board Member Malikian.
Yes.
Madam Chair Palmer.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, the next project we have is PDR 14.
Before I forget, but as a reminder, if anyone wishes to be re-noticed about the project, please fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and provide it to me because.
I'm going to chat about this later.
Okay, the next project, 1731 Allen Avenue. Ms. Toledo,
It's here, right?
Milka.
Correct.
Alan just emailed Chris something, and she put it on the server, and we showed it, if you want to do that. Oh, wait, it is. They come up perspective or a layout?
One of the photos.
This is all that's on the disc.
Okay.
So.
I have the pictures if you want me to pass them around, but I need to print them. So in the meantime, I'll start the presentation.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. You've seen this project before, but we will.
We have?
Well, you have when the remodel took place, and I'll go through it in my presentation.
I remember you.
So these are pictures of the subject site, around the neighborhood, rather.
Which one are we looking at?
17 Allen. Those are the neighborhood photos.
Okay.
And if you give me a moment after I've made my presentation,
On the wrong project.
I can print
That's why I'm like.
You want to get to Glendale?
the pictures unless you want to see them on my phone.
I had to climb over the fence to get to this project.
So
This one?
this project actually was reviewed for the remodel of the house and a 720 square foot addition
Oh, the remodels on.
of the existing house. This is what the current house looks like, but it's currently under construction. It's on the panel behind you. Back in April of 2013, April 25th, that's when the board reviewed the project for the exterior remodel and for the addition. At the time, again, the applicant was proposing a 720 square foot addition, an exterior remodel. And what they're doing today, or what they're proposing, is to add an attached 1,032 square foot outdoor open deck with a swimming pool. And there will be habitable floor area underneath, approximately 671 square feet of what they call a game room. And they will, well, let me rephrase that. It will be 661 square feet of floor area and a 371 square foot covered patio. The open deck serves as the roof of the area underneath. The attached area is located on the southwest side of the house, and it will follow the contour, so it will step down according to the hillside, because the house is actually located on a relatively flat pad. Any questions so far of what they're proposing? So here we have the site. Here are the plans. This is the street, Allen Avenue. It's actually a long driveway. As you approach the driveway, you go up. And this is the garage. This is the existing house. And the area that they're proposing to propose or add the new deck is in this area over here. And so this is what it would look like along that elevation. Here we have the covered porch or patio. This would be the habitable floor area, which is what they call the game room. And this would be the deck above. This entire area serves as the roof for this portion underneath. With me so far? Okay. Actually, staff is recommending approval with conditions, and we only have one condition, so that would kind of summarize my presentation. And the condition is exterior lighting to be shielded and directed downward away from the hillside.
Mike, I had a question. I wasn't here for the other house. Can you tell me where the addition took place?
Yes. Actually, it was in several areas. I don't have those plans with me.
I'm not
but
concerned so much in the back. How about the front portion or the?
It was one area in here,
Okay.
and then it was an area back here, and the applicant can also clarify. And the main thing was the exterior remodel. It is a one-story house. It will remain one-story.
Was there a pool before there?
No. We did, thank you for bringing that. We did, that brings me just one additional item I wanted to note for the record, that we did receive one letter of a concerned resident in the area, Carol Welling, and she had concerns regarding the use of water for the pool.
My other question, you're counting the height on this thing because you're considering this attached?
Yes, we are, from the lowest to the highest point. And that should not exceed 32 feet, because we are in the R1R zone.
So this was, and the rationale behind the attachment, that's considered?
It is less than 5 feet eave to eave from any
Yeah, but
building.
you're saying it's attached?
It is attached. It does not have direct access from the interior of the house. So you would have to exit the house and go through the stairs in order to access the deck.
My question was, how is it attached to the house?
It is less than 5 feet eave to eave from a building.
It's attached under the
So
code.
under the code, it's considered attached because it's less than 5 feet eave to eave. And it is touching the house physically.
Yeah, okay.
So that in and of
If it
itself.
wasn't within
Even if
5
it was,
feet.
if it's less than 5 feet eave to eave per our regulations, it's
Yeah,
by
but if it was
definition, it's right.
detached, the square footage would change, correct?
It would be considered an accessory building, so therefore they couldn't exceed 500 square feet of habitable floor area. Still wouldn't trigger parking. This does, but they're fine with the parking. They have the 3-car garage. Because their under total would be still under 3,500 square feet.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any protected trees on the property?
Not that I'm aware of.
I don't see any.
And the landscaping that was originally proposed, they're not changing. Of course, with the modifications.
And unless I missed it, is there a window detail for the habitable space underneath?
I don't have a window detail, I just have the material board, which they're proposing to match with the original
Okay.
specification plans as it relates to, if I recall, I believe it was aluminum anodized,
Yeah.
but I'll have
We'll talk
the
to the architect.
applicant address that.
No more questions? I'm going to open the public hearing. Mr. Zarabian?
Good evening. My name is Patrick Zarabians, a project architect. 3467 Ocean View Boulevard, Suite B, Glendale, California, 91208. In the interest of time, I really have basically one thing to add is that I talked to the owner and we're okay with the condition. I think Milka did a thorough job explaining the project, and I'm here for any questions, concerns. That's basically it. It was pretty simple.
I had a question. I mean, you have a nice house design. Can't you introduce those vertical elements that you have carried in the house or those in between those windows to the bottom?
Can I?
Want to come up?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about these. Could you have done something to incorporate that in here?
Well, that's to incorporate in a new addition?
Yeah, the new addition, right? Because it looks a little foreign to me, that.
Well, the portion of the house that has those vertical lines is basically the existing portion of the house. We're cladding them with stone, and they're not. There's two types of stones that we're using on the building. One is a textured, cultured stone, and then the other one would be the same type of stone, but a flatter, bigger blocks that we would just, do like a field pattern on. And those vertical pieces have that stone on there, and the facade of the deck would be the cultured stone. So I don't have those vertical elements on that bottom curve. Again, most of it's open with that covered patio area. So
How far does the pool go into the ceiling, or does it?
it's a shallow pool, so it's about, let's say, 4.5 feet all the way. As far as the depth,
down in the
and then
ceiling.
2 feet of it actually sticks above the deck, so that it creates an infinity edge on all four sides, and then the 2 feet would go underneath, into the cavity, basically into that game room area.
That's right. Okay.
So
it's basically a lap pool.
yeah, like a lounge pool where you can just walk and, set up a volleyball net and I don't know, whatever.
Any other questions?
How much of a cubic yard are you removing?
What's the question?
Cubic yards.
400 semi.
Does it? I can't.
It's on the plan somewhere. It's on the A2. 413.
Oh, okay.
Any other questions?
Windows, dianized, aluminum.
All the windows, they actually ordered the windows already for the house itself, and they're all Fleetwood, anodized, dark bronze.
Including the large panel.
I'm sorry?
Including this large panel area here.
It's perpendicular.
No, there's no
That's
glass
the
there.
covered
That's a
area.
covered patio.
That's the covered patio.
Yeah, there's no glass there.
So the cross
It'll just be a
section
glass
here
railing.
are artist rendering that you have.
Uh-huh.
That's perpendicular section of glass.
Yes,
Going into-
yes, from
okay.
inside, yeah. They're pocket doors that would slide into the wall and then join the patio with the game
Removable.
room. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Since I have you up here, this rendering, because I was out there a few times actually trying to determine the slope. What's happening in the front of this? I mean, because our slope right now does this, and there's a little flatness, but you're coming down and flattening this out. Is this rendering accurate representation of it? You know how it's kind of in front
Well,
of
right
our-
after the deck, right when the deck ends, it flattens out a little bit and then it goes down again.
So there's a flat area in
Yeah,
the front
yeah.
of the, okay. Yeah,
All
okay.
right, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to close the public hearing. Mr. Marty?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The only comment that I had, I think this is a fine addition.
We have one public comment
Speak.
card. I'm sorry, it just came in.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We have
See
two.
that. I've got to open this again. Well, I can't read it. Is that Anna somebody?
Anna
If you-
Galfayan.
Thank you.
Sorry.
It's Anna Galfayan. I am resident at 1749 Allen, right above the project. We do like the house. We do like the project. We don't have anything against the project. It's well thought by the same architectural group as designed our house. Two comments that I would like to mention for safety of all and especially applicants. One issue, when we were moving to our house, we were provided with very thick package that was provided to us by the city engineer Lou LeBlanc at the time about earthquake zone, about soil. So the question that I have, because this driveway is very steep, and the pool that is supposed to be at the edge of the flat area that this property has, I'm sure you have done the soil report and how safe it is to have a pool in that area because right underneath there is a driveway for another house. So that's one issue that I have. And I don't see the whole picture, but proposed addition as well as the pool will occupy 100% of the flat pad. And there was question with the driveway last time. The applicant was going to increase and change the driveway, but it was decided to keep the same. It's fairly narrow, it's fairly steep driveway. Now, with this access to the pool, additional space, if it will create a problem for the future. And one more comment, because I'm right on top and I see the roof every time. The roof height was supposed to stay at the same height as the original roof. And on the east side, it's at least 2 to 3 feet higher at this time that by the project plans that were approved in April of 2013. Those are 3 issues that, I would like to address.
Thank you. Does the architect want to address
There's another
questions?
There's another
There's one more.
Oh,
And the roof height issue isn't germane to our discussion tonight. That was already approved by the board and is under construction.
Right.
And will be inspected by building and safety inspectors.
To verify the height you're talking about.
Yeah, to see if the height deviates from what was approved, that will be caught through the building inspection process.
okay, I have one more speaker, Eddie Galastian.
Hi, my name is Eddie Galston. We're 1749 Allen again. It took us so many years to build our house with lots of heartache and money that we spent. The great architect that we also used his design is fantastic. We live at that place right now. The only problem that we looked at, my wife, she had discussed just a minute ago, that the height is just a little higher than what was used to be on the older house. That was, and the only concern that we have, we're all for it, what he's doing, and it's pretty good. I hope that they enjoy the new house. Thank you.
Does the architect want to address any of those questions? Your name and address again, please.
Patrick Zarabians, 3467 Ocean View Boulevard, Suite B, Glendale, California, 91208. So in terms of the driveway, changing it or widening it, I remember going back and forth. I think Alan was there also. What we decided to do is introduce some sort of curb. When the driveway comes up like this towards the side, on this side, the concern was, someone maybe, since it's narrow, falling off that side. So we discussed with the board, and at that time we decided to add some sort of curb on that side, like a short wall, if you will, along that side of the driveway. That's the only thing that we were going to do, and we're still planning on doing that. Again, the house is under construction. It's nowhere near, done as far as the outside. As far as the heights, pretty much the entire building stayed the same as far as the height. There was one area that was always there. It was part of the original approval, was the kitchen area, for it to be a certain height, and that hasn't changed. And again, I'm sure once they do, framing inspection and Milka comes out there to do that inspection, she'll verify those heights and make sure they're, according to what was approved.
All right, thank you. Now, Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm satisfied with what's presented here. I had mixed feelings at the beginning, but my questions were answered. And with that, the only thing I suggest or recommend, if there's a way to introduce those vertical elements, I truly think will help the incorporate the house with the design. Somehow the picture gives me the image of being a little foreign to the rest of it. Since this is attached, I truly feel that you need to add some vertical elements, especially when you have the similar curvature that you have there. If you could make it work, that's fine with me.
Mr. Malikian?
I've kept my mouth shut for this one because I was trying to use this project as an example for the previous project, so I didn't want to bring this up. So like I was holding myself back, but now that we're on this project, I think it's a great example of how a hillside addition can happen. Obviously, there are options of going up on the second floor, which will have other issues, and what they're proposing is I think it's done exactly what the hillside envisions, in my opinion, and kind of digging into the hill and tucking it in. Placement, I think it works with the curvature of the existing house. And I agree. I think some of the existing details that are there, I think it could be used as part of the feature for the new addition. So it kind of ties in together. But overall, I think you've done a great job. So I'm fully supportive of it.
Mr. Charchian?
No comment other than good project.
I totally agree. I would just comment, since it's been going on for so long, that once you do the landscaping, clean up the area along the Allen Street, the trees and everything, so it becomes a cohesive project, but well done, I think. So we have no comments other than the one that...
Can we, is there any consensus on the introduction of vertical elements to the new section under the deck?
It's a consideration.
Consideration?
I'll make a motion to approve with consideration.
Give a second.
I'll second.
Motion by Board Member Malikian.
That was quick, huh?
Yes.
Versus Ellen.
And that was a second by Board Member Charchian.
Yes.
Motion to approve with conditions. Board Member Malikian.
Yes.
Board Member Charchian.
Yes.
Board Member Mardian.
Yes.
Chairperson Palmer.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. Thank you.
Take a break for a minute.
Next project is 1407 West Glen Oaks.
Madam Chair, can we take a break?
Oh, you
for a
want
few
to
minutes?
take, okay.
If you don't mind?
Take
Just
a
for
5-minute
restroom.
break?
Yeah.
heart's been yearning, the skies above been turning. Feels like the universe just grew. I've waited for so long. I've waited for so long. Just wanna be with you always. I wanna be around you always. I just wanna be with you. Oh, no one making it you. Oh, no one. And when the night starts falling, even the stars are calling, spinning and spilling out your name. That's what I call fame. Spilling out your name forever and ever. Love is a hurting thing, it doesn't go away. Forever is a long time, just wanna be with you. Oh, no one. You always, I wanna be around you. Always, just wanna be with you. Oh, no one. Making it you. Oh, no one. You, oh, no one. If you, oh, no
Thank you. Our final project for the evening is 1407 West Glen Oaks, and Mr. Kiesel will present the project.
Good evening, Madam Chair. The final case before you this evening is the project located at 1407 West Glen Oaks Boulevard. The applicant is proposing to construct a mixed-use project with approximately 13,000 square feet of commercial use or commercial space and 74 residential units. Just as a quick clarification, since you received the packets last week, they've reduced the number of units by 2. That's why there are 74 units, whereas a lot of your reference material has said 76. The project will be 4 stories, and the residential units will be studio, 1, 2, and they've actually added some 3-bedroom units. They've combined studios to make 3-bedroom units. That's another recent change that isn't reflected in your plans. Most of the units will be flats, although there are 8 residences located in the north part of the site that are townhouses. The commercial space will front West Glen Oaks Boulevard sort of in a C shape. And then in the center of the site, well, I should say there will be publicly accessible open space adjacent to West Glen Oaks Boulevard, 3 sides surrounded by commercial, and the 4th being the street. So that area in the front is publicly accessible open space. Let me see. There are 220 parking spaces, which is another change from your staff report. And the parking spaces will be on grade as well as subterranean levels. At this point, I want to turn it over to Jay. I'm sorry, not Jay, to Tim, and then to Jay.
Thank you. Board members, I just briefly want to give you a little context on the permit being sought here. This is an application for design review, but it's within the context of an application for precise plan of design overlay zone. And this is a overlay zone which has existed in the code for many years, but the regulations were recently revised. And the purpose of the zone is to allow for unique developments on specific unique locations, areas that have some historic development pattern or unique topography or some sort of unique characteristic or simple economies of scale that might warrant some flexibility in zoning standards. So you don't have to make a decision on those on the zoning standards and how they differ from the underlying zone, but you should make a design review recommendation here. This code is written so that while design review approval is required, the approval authority for that is the City Council. They will be making that at the same time that they make a decision on the overlay zoning designation. And as a matter of fact, this is the only type of zoning designation we have where it is tied to a specific set of plans. So if these plans aren't built within the normal 2-year period, which is the limit we have on virtually all our entitlements, then the council can revoke that overlay zoning designation. Plans go away. This won't give them permission to build anything other than what you're seeing and what the council will see. As a zone change, according to state law, it has to go through the Planning Commission for their recommendation to City Council. And our ordinance is written that a director can also send it to other boards and commissions, such as the Design Review Board, for your review and recommendation to the City Council. So the actions you take tonight should just be a recommendation to the City Council. You're not really, at this point, in this type of application, empowered to do a return for redesign or a denial, or even really an approval. just recommending to council what you think of the design and whether it should be approved or not. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I had a question. So this is 2 years, so they have to build it within 2 years? Or is it 2 years for the entitlement?
It's 2 years for the entitlement. I mean, it's very similar to all of our other entitlements. Done your normal approvals
By the time they get
are
a
good for 2
building.
years, and really what that means is that someone has to have applied for building permits within 2 years.
Within 2 years, okay.
Actively pursuing extensions can be requested.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Foy? Jay.
Okay, and I'd just like to provide a quick overview of the design memo that I know you haven't had a chance to read in any detail. In general, staff is very supportive of this design. We think it is a very handsome, very clear, very coherent design that's well thought out in the round at all facades and at the interior spaces. To hit a few of the points that we're looking to emphasize, the site planning, and I'll go through it in the standard way we present these things. The site plan seems very typical for projects of this size in that the building will take up most of the lot, approaching the perimeters toward the north, east, and west. At the street facade facing Glen Oaks, there is a large public plaza that's going to be publicly accessible, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a second. One thing that does is provides kind of a break in the street wall that a large project like this would otherwise create. In addition to that public space facing the street, there's also a large courtyard at the center of the building, which we look at carefully in designs like this. We think it's very important to have that private open space. One thing that's not clear, and you should just know that some of the aspects that are shown on the drawings haven't been fully fleshed out. There are a few conflicts between drawings, and we'll continue to work with the design team to get a very accurate set of drawings by the time we go to council for this. One concern that we have is that there are different proposals shown to program that courtyard space. And for the board to know, one of our main concerns is that these areas have multiple discrete programmed areas so that occupants in groups, individuals can all hang out in the same area and feel that they have kind of a space that's their own rather than just one large open courtyard. And then we also look carefully at the landscaping to make sure there's an appropriate buffer between the units at that level, the public space or the public uses inside the courtyard. So you'll see there's a small pool proposed, a sun deck area. What we generally see are multiple seating areas, often barbecue areas or other uses like that, and we'll make sure that those are appropriate. The parking has been handled well from a design standpoint, and the grade level parking or the street level parking is completely hidden from view except along the driveway, and then there's a subterranean level of parking. And then stepping back and thinking about the front plaza, as we worked with the design team, since this is a public space, we were very concerned that it not be walled off from the public and that it be made as porous as possible so that anyone walking down the street could feel comfortable moving into the plaza, having a seat, looking at the art, hanging out there in any way they're comfortable with. We think that they have successfully addressed that given the sloping grade change along Glen Oaks, where we have a grade differential that leads to steps in some locations. The team has come up with a proposal that that creates kind of small ramps into the plaza from the street between some of the planters that should provide an inviting setting for people. We've also asked to have a specimen tree, a large shade tree in the area. There's going to be an art installation as well as multiple seating areas. So we think they have achieved the porosity that we think we can look at this and say that the public will feel welcome to come in and use this area. Again, in terms of landscaping, we don't have all of the details that we'd like to have, and we didn't expect to have them at this point. But we do see that the proposal calls for landscaping at all perimeter areas and in the courtyard and at the front plaza. We are comfortable that we will be able to work with the design team with your direction to ensure that we have the details that we need to make this landscaping work. We're especially interested in getting details about planter depths and the square footages, locations of this, the species we haven't finalized. And we expect that we'll have all of that information by the time we go to City Council with your units all have private open space. Originally, a few didn't, but they've revised the plan so that we now have private open space for every unit. And that is important. Another aspect of the site plan that I didn't mention that also affects the mass and scale is that as the property abuts the multifamily zone to the north, the project in a large central portion of the project steps down to 2-story high townhouse units that are placed on top of the podium instead of the 3-story high components that form the rest of the building. We think that's an appropriate set down that's in keeping with previous board and council approvals for projects like this where we abut a different zone. In terms of the mass and scale, we think that a lot of the design elements that have been proposed mitigate what is undoubtedly central in everyone's mind, that this is a large project in an area that doesn't have other projects like this. So this will be the largest building on Glen Oaks Boulevard in this immediate area. We do think through design, though, a lot of those massing and scale issues have been mitigated. We think that the plaza does a big part of that by pushing a major portion of the mass back away from the street. We also think that the rhythms established by the vertical components that alternate with the balcony bays do a very good job of breaking up the facades. The parapet heights alternate across the main facade and also along the side and back facade to create a kind of pleasing line that doesn't overwhelm or dominate the neighbors. I should have also noted that there are commercial properties to either side on the east and west on Glen Oaks, so it's a very different condition at those facades than we have at the rear where there's a multifamily zone. And then we have different cladding materials proposed, including metal panel, composite wood, cultured stone, glass railings, and we think this variety of materials will kind of also break up the massing, have transparency in certain locations, but also create kind of a pleasing composition that will improve or enhance the overall design as seen from the street. One thing to note is that the side and rear elevations were designed with as much care and detail, we think, as the front elevations, and a lot of these higher-end cladding materials and the use of multiple materials, textures, and colors continues around the perimeter of the building. In terms of the design and detailing, I've kind of covered some of that already, but we think that the use of interplay of planes and volumes, the crisp detailing, the horizontal line formed by the base of the building, which will hold commercial uses as it relates to the upper floors with residential uses that have a more vertical emphasis, works really well. We think the materials and colors are appropriate. In terms of lighting and signs, we don't have enough information at this point, but a project with more than two commercial units will require a sign program, which we typically develop at staff level. The public art component required for a project of this size is going to be handled through an in lieu payment to the city's art fund, but an additional art feature on site is proposed for the front courtyard to kind of add visual interest and make it more of a draw for the public approaching the building. With all of that said, we think it is a very good design. We are recommending some preliminary conditions at this point, one of which is to provide landscaping at the north property line that's going to be of an appropriate height and density to create an appropriate buffer with the adjacent residential zone. We definitely need to see more detailed landscape drawings, including plant specifications, locations, irrigation plans, and also section drawings showing the typical planters that are being used. We're looking for more detailed plans of the residential courtyard so that we can, like I mentioned, maximize those programmable areas and make sure they interface well with the landscaped areas. I believe we've addressed the open space for the private.
Yeah, actually we have. Since you received the plans, the applicants have made some minor revisions, and in addition to sort of condensing some of the studio units and combining them together to make 3-bedroom units, all the units now have a private open space. So that's not something that we're interested in putting as a condition.
Those are those corner units up in the...
Correct.
Yeah, they've reconfigured things. Yeah. In keeping with approvals that we take when we go to the council with DSP-type projects, but larger projects of this size, we're asking that short-term bike racks be installed in the front plaza area or adjacent to it so that bicyclists can visit the businesses. We're also looking for long-term bicycle storage, probably in the upper garage level for building residents. We are asking for more information about all of the material finishes. We've heard of some, but we don't know much about the windows and doors at this time, and obviously we'll look for a material board at when we go to council review. And I say this just because we don't have certainty about it, but based on other projects we've worked on with this design team, high-end materials are always specified, and we're very comfortable that we're going to be getting that on this project. And finally, we're going to look for section and detail drawings indicating the placement of windows within the walls, doors as well, the storefronts, and also how the different cladding materials are going to interface. We'll look for detailed drawings so that we understand that those connections are going to be as crisp and neat as they look on the drawings.
I have a question. The calculation for the open space, is it, it's included in the front also, correct? Is that figure calculated differently when you have retail and residential? I'm saying, like, this is an indentation in the front, which is used by retail as well as the individual.
That area is counted as open space.
As common open space.
And then
or the whole development.
Correct.
Also under the PPD, we're not looking at our standard numbers or requirements. We're looking at the project as proposed. So if you had comments about that, we could make them as a recommendation to City Council.
I just wondered if retail took up some of that common area, or if it was for all the units, there was enough common area.
It's not designated for the retail uses, but it will be shared, I believe.
The front open area is publicly accessible. It obviously is shared because the retail units in the front, the public can go there and then use the front courtyard. The project has enough open space absent that.
That's what I'm asking.
Okay, sorry.
But it doesn't conform to our standards, 200 per unit or 150 or 100.
I'm sorry, say
it. Doesn't conform to.
It does.
100 square feet per unit?
Yes. When you include, you can take out the common open space. When you include the central courtyard and sort of the fingers on either side, and then some of the areas on the periphery of the site, they achieve the amount of common open space that they're supposed to.
But, sorry to interrupt you, but you call this as a mini park in your negative deck?
It's really just common, or it's really just a publicly accessible open space. No, it's not a mini park.
So clarify for me, our review today, because on the first one it says provide comments to City Council, but when I look at this new handout that you gave me, it says recommend approval of the proposed advisory capacity. So which one is it?
Recommend. Staff is recommending that you recommend approval of the project to the City Council. You're an advisory body to the City Council.
No, my other question is on today we cannot comment on density, height, or we can?
You certainly can, yeah. You're going to provide input on site planning, mass and scale, design and detailing. That's your role in this. And if there are issues related to density in this case, you can certainly provide them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Along with your normal concerns about compatibility with the neighborhood. Sure.
Yeah. Sorry.
Do we have any drawings showing the adjacent properties relative to this? Like a streetscape?
Yeah, let me look in the packet again.
The only one you have is the isometric one.
Yeah. I would like to mention, before the applicant team comes up, that I did receive a couple emails this morning with concerns on the project, and they should be on your desks.
I'll bring up some street view images if those help in any way.
The site plan shows adjacent buildings to it would be sort of east and west.
Has there been a traffic study on this, as far as that driveway that's close to the corner?
I'm sorry?
Traffic study?
There was a traffic study done. I can look at the environmental and see what it had to say.
Yeah, there is one done.
Is it
I'm
in the
sorry?
environmental?
It's an environmental.
And if you see on Street View, the driveway will be along the west edge of the property here. There's the corner.
Can I ask another question? Has there any consideration been given for 2 driveways versus 1? Or is that something we can discuss later?
I don't believe in any of the iterations of the project there were ever 2 driveways in and out. I know in a relatively recent revision, the driveway moved west a little bit from where it was proposed earlier. It was more proposed in the eastern portion of the site, and it's been moved west.
On that same note, on the driveway, this, if I might be mistaken on this, but the layout of this lot, as to I think it's 1222 Sonora, the lot that is a office structure right behind there. There's, I believe, an old easement because this lot, when it was used as a restaurant, had access, which has now been blocked by a fence. Now, if an easement is there, can there be a second driveway? Has that been looked at? Is that something that is
If
possible?
I'm understanding your
Is the easement
Yeah.
here?
There's some
driver.
It would be indicative of an easement, and it would allow for some traffic, or at least maybe a residential, or some sort of reduction of the traffic flow onto Glen Oaks.
There is an existing office building with parking, surface parking on Sonora, I
Yes.
believe. At this point, they do have access to the surface parking in back of them and in back of the current vacant restaurant site. This project incorporates the surface parking in back of the existing restaurant site.
No, I don't think we could encumber this property with an easement guaranteeing access to the new development.
I was assuming that the two lots were either at one time together, or that there was an existing easement because of the fact that there's a driveway between the two lots.
And we could ask the project team if they've researched that history.
Have any other questions?
Those are tandem arrangement. Well, that's as a plan, precise plan of development. That's one of the things that isn't allowed in this part of town.
Okay. The tandem is grade is for residential as well, right?
The low grade is entirely residential. Yes.
So you got more tandem on the street level.
Correct.
Those tandems are for commercial.
No.
Oh,
No. Sorry. No, not necessarily. Some residential parking will be on the upper level.
See. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to open the session. First card I have is Rodney Kahn.
Good evening, Chairperson, board members, and city staff. My name is Rodney Kahn. My offices are located on Brand Boulevard here in the city of Glendale. As staff mentioned, we're requesting what's called a precise plan of design, which is PPD. And it's very different and it's very unique for an overlay zone. As a matter of information, I just want to let yourselves know and those interested in the public, we do have hearings coming up other than this one this evening. We have a Planning Commission hearing, which is scheduled for Wednesday, October the 29th in this room. And we have a City Council hearing for this project, which is scheduled Tuesday, November the 18th of this year as well. This site is located in an area of the city, West Glen Oaks Boulevard, that really needs improvement. And there's not been a lot of investment in this western part of our city. This project that you're going to review here this evening, it is an ownership project. Those are condominiums that we're proposing. We see the neighborhood commercial retail along with the large public open space component. There was a question about a traffic study. Yes, we did, and as was pointed out, we've done an extensive CEQA environmental analysis, which included traffic, noise, safety, along with quite a number of other items. I think the mitigated negative declaration was included as a reference document for you guys. Last, before we get into the design issues, we've had feedback from City Council. We've been meeting on this project, and some of the changes that have been incorporated are as a result of their direct input. And that's why you've seen some tweaks and some modifications as to what you're reviewing here this evening. There was a question about the easement. Is there a possibility of the easement coming off? There really is not an easement there. There was a prescriptive easement for a vault, is the only easement that's recorded on the property. Lastly, the lot that's directly north of us, which is a parking lot that's not part of this original site, is a city-owned lot that we are in a purchase and sale agreement with the city to buy to include in this site. And that northern part is also zoned commercial, which would make sense to add to our property, which is what we're doing. Anyway, I'll conclude my remarks. I'll invite our architect up to give you a presentation of the project. Thank you.
Before you go, Mr. Rodnick, if I may, so this back lot, I thought it was part of this.
It is part of our project now.
Yes, okay.
But it's not part of the original site. Okay. The original site was actually, as you see, where the striped parking area is and the building. Right, okay. So it was a sliver that was originally attached to the property to the north, which the city owns, which is zoned R1250.
I'm sorry. When you're talking about not the flat vacant section there.
No, it's just the parking lot directly north, which is being highlighted right now.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I'm sorry, the property north of that, which is the flat vacant part, is also city-owned?
It's city-owned, and I believe that the city has ideas for an affordable housing project there.
Okay. And then maybe a question for you. How are you planning on handling refuse at this facility for 74 units? I would one access point.
Yeah, I would have to defer to our architects to highlight where our trash and recycling areas are for the project. Thank you.
Okay. Glendale.
Good evening, Madam Chairperson, board members and staff. My name is Glenn DeVere. I'm an architect with American General Design in Pasadena, 139 South Los Robles, Unit 106. Jay, we've been working with Jay and staff for over 8 months on this project, and he knows this project just about as well as I do at this point, and he's pretty much said it all in terms of the design. We're here to answer any questions that you might have, and I look forward to your recommendations and advice to the City Council.
Any questions for?
I have a few questions, actually. Going back to the driveway, has there any thought given to having 2 driveways for this project?
We did. It just takes up too much of our commercial space. The westerly section was chosen because it's probably most efficient for us. We had one time envisioned putting the driveway infilade with the street that goes north-south that is south of Glen Oaks, and that was the very first scheme. And then the other portion came about in the back of the site, came to us from the city, potentially, and that drove the change for more parking stalls and the removal and the relocation of the driveway.
Now, we call this open space, this pocket that we're creating at the street edge.
Yes.
Although we don't have details on the landscape, but these are all planters on deck.
They are. We have one large planter, approximately 400 square feet, that is in the westerly section.
Okay.
We see that planter being about 36 inches in height on deck in terms of the perimeter, with about a 12-inch depression in the slab itself, enabling us to get about 48 inches of soil, which we think may service some sort of a specimen tree.
Okay, my other question is, you have a pool. Is that depressed in the slab? Because I see it flat with the deck.
It is a pool that would be depressed.
And all the planters...
And it would only be
is just
no more than 3 foot deep.
Yeah, figured it.
So this wouldn't affect the parking ceiling?
Yes, it would. Absolutely. We have a 15-foot height between sidewalk level and podium, and so we can make that up in the vertical distance in the garage.
Now I have another question. The pedestrian access from this parking to this space is only through that one corridor?
I believe we have 2 corridors. I'm sorry.
That's it. It's one
Yes,
corridor.
over by the lobby. Yes.
Right.
You're correct.
So that's the pedestrian access to the building, to the parking, and I couldn't read, I mean, I'm looking at the, so is this driveway 28 minus 4 feet, or 24 minus 4 feet for the pedestrian walkway?
Yes.
Yeah.
I might also add that I was quite surprised when I walked that site during the middle of the day to see how much foot traffic was actually on Glen Oaks. I thought that was a dead zone. It's not. So there's a lot of foot traffic.
Well, I think the foot traffic is because of the DMV down there. It's not.
The DMV is at the end of the block. Yes.
Yeah, but there is foot traffic there, especially actually at night. There's a lot of foot traffic in that block, which I think would benefit by a project with it open.
What about servicing the commercial part? Is there any?
So off on the back, we have we haven't really fully designed that as of yet, but all the trash. Someone asked about trash. We have our. I've got my.
Your laser pointer.
Handy pointer.
Don't get that.
Yeah, I won't do that.
Come on.
As a lawyer, you know.
We have our trash pickup in this area, and we see a trash area in here as well.
How is that going to get to the street for a collection?
What we have done in Pasadena, we're Pasadena architects, although we're rooted in Glendale. We have Vertec come in, or Pasadena Waste come in with smaller units. Remember, we're 14-foot deck, and we have trucks come in and remove the trash bins and haul them out to the street.
So you feel comfortable having those 2 trash locations for all the commercial and 73 units?
Yes.
Those 2 small little areas are sufficient.
And trucks would also service the commercial by going in this garage, or just on
In terms of a loading zone, you mean? We don't have a loading zone per se, but again, we have that 14-foot deck-to-deck, and boxer trucks would get in. We have our driveway height. We're required to have our electrical vault room is situated right over here. And so we're required by Glendale Water and Power to have a flat section of driveway, 12 foot high, to get into that vault and service that.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. I close the public hearing. Mr. Charchian, you want to start?
Sure. First of all, I think that the project overall is a great.
We have a card.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I shouldn't have. Mr. Kazad, Aram Kazarian. I had it covered up. I'm sorry.
Aram Kazazian, 372 Arden Avenue, Glendale. The reason I'm here, this project was voted by 4 council people to get the PPD zone approved exactly 3 weeks ago. And the 30 days is not over yet, so legally you don't even have the right to hear this case today until the 30 days over, until the approval goes in effect. Also, the Planning Commission legally cannot hear it. But anyway, I'm going to go through it now. The PPD zone, I went through and studied it. It was done mainly, this is one of the projects. There's other projects involved in the PPD zone too coming up. They tried to get this thing approved in February of this year. They approved apply for the PPD zone, but according to the PPD zone, you cannot get this project approved without variances. Over 24 variances requires to approve this particular project. It requires a zone change and a general plan amendment. They couldn't do that, so they got together to see what they could do. So they made an amendment to amend the PPD zone, and the PPD zone was amended against the Glendale charter, by the way. It's against the Glendale charter, and the city attorney could not provide me to this day the case laws on how they got this approved. I emailed to him again 3 days ago. I asked for the case laws for him to provide that he mentioned in a hearing, and he was not able to provide me any case laws approving it because the Glendale charter does not allow this particular amendments on the PPD zone. That's one aspect of it. So it's for you something to think about. I believe it's illegal today, your approval. I have nothing wrong with the project. The project is a good project. I know the area very well. And like Rodney said, there is no easement there. That was a contract between the previous owner of that particular building, Bob's Big Boy, to allow the traffic to go through. But then when ownership changed, they took that agreement away. There was a lease agreement only. Was not any easements going on. The comments I have, this project is right on the sidewalk again, the two ends of the building. According to C2, this is C2 land, you're required to have a 10-foot setback. So you can, it should at least be 5 feet, maybe setback. The building next door, the hotel, the extended stay is a 10-foot setback from the property line. It should at least be that. Another comment I have, the overhangs over the balcony area. Each balcony makes an overhang over the glass. This building does face to the south. That means those balconies up in that area are going to get a lot of sun. People are going to end up putting foils and everything to block the sun from coming in. They could extend that overhang. The same overhang can go out to shade that area over there too. And the driveway, I'll make it fast, the driveway is in correct side. If you're going to make the driveway, you got to put her on the east side, not the west side, because getting out of there, the traffic is on bumper to bumper piled up, and the end of the street, you can't even get out of that. I don't know how the traffic engineer approved that. You should, like Commissioner Mardian said, it should be 2 driveways, and 24 feet plus 4 feet is almost impossible to make a turn. 2 cars going by in and out. If you're going to make one driveway, it should at least be 30 feet wide, less than 4 feet. Thank you very much. If you want any more information, I'll be glad to. Let me see if I have anything else to say. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You want to rebut that, Mr. Khan?
Madam Chair and board members, I'll be very quick and brief. As it relates to your authority to review this here today, I'll defer to the staff. As it relates to the other items that were brought up, whether City Council voted on this 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, a month ago, I'll defer that to staff as well. We are going through a process. This is part of the process we are required to go through, and we will continue to go through this process as legally allowed and required by staff. Finally, as it relates to just the overall traffic that we've talked about, we had a traffic engineer that did a traffic study. We work with the city's traffic engineer. as well that approved our study. They looked at this layout and they blessed it. So any of the traffic issues, any of those types of concerns have already been reviewed and approved by the city's traffic engineer. I'll conclude our remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Now you can start.
I can start again. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Chairwoman. I think that overall, getting creative to bring a development like this to Glendale is a good idea. I understand that there's a lot of thinking that needs to still happen on some of the elements. I am concerned that this is a 4-story project where the majority of neighboring properties are 2-story at best commercial, except for the extended stay. I mean, it helps that you have extended stay next door. That said, I think that can be addressed with the design elements. I think that a recommendation would be that whoever prepares the CCNRs for this project consider some of the aesthetic features on Glen Oaks Boulevard. Gentleman mentioned foiling and things of that nature. I think that would be a benefit, just a recommendation for you to jot down. The open space, because it is a south-facing area with a lot of potential heat off of the building, I would recommend that the landscaping plan provide as much shade as possible. Right now, I see this as being a pretty nice area for the community members to use. I would want there to be shade in that area. I am concerned about the overall number of units, the volume of people going in and out, and specifically some of the design elements as to where the utility room is, the refuse room is. You have it right in front of handicap parking. I think that that's going to be something that will create issues for the homeowners down the road, so it should be thought of at this point in time. Traditionally, these projects, when they're in the city of Pasadena or in San Diego, where I've had experience with them, have an alleyway, are blessed to have an alleyway or a side street that they can work off of. Here, you're mid-block, so you have specific challenges, so we understand with those challenges how you are able to utilize one parking, one driveway. But I think that those things need to be considered, especially with the commercial units as well, and the uses that you might be foreseeing. With that said, I will defer to my colleagues on the board as far as any articulations and things that they think that the facade needs. That's it.
Mr. Malikian?
Being that we're going to be giving some recommendations and some design thoughts, I'm going to concentrate on some of the things that I see that will ultimately impact the overall design and something to consider and something to think about. Well, one of the biggest issues that I see as far as the parking is concerned, and I'll start with the parking and then I'll go out and then I'll look at some of the other components, is that you're going to bring up 73 units of times 2, I'm assuming, or 2.5. I don't know how many parking spaces you have down below. So you got 140 cars coming up through the back side of that driveway, making a turn, going around, and then combining the other parking spaces that are on the level, street level, combined to one funneling down to one driveway. I think a little bit more study needs to be spent on the traffic and how all of these cars are coming all together and exiting in one component. You're probably going to have a lot more traffic generated through the retail space than the residential, but you're still bringing everybody in and out from there. You're also creating, in my opinion, I think you're creating down below, you created this shape of a large square structure that has absolutely no way of
having exits. I think the exiting, the way that the shafts are located, I don't think they meet the diagonal that you would want. And the reason that I'm saying is that may ultimately impact your overall design shaft. I think your overall, when you look at the diagonal 1/3 distance, you don't have that. Same thing goes back to the street level. You created some parallel parking in the back, and you've tucked in the bicycle parking all the way in the back. I think bicycle parking should be closer to the street level rather than in the back, and be able to have a much easier access to the people from back as they park to exit out from the front of the building. Creating one small little entry to the garage level in the street, I don't think that's sufficient enough. I think you need a little bit more exiting and proper discharge from people from there. It also created some dead-end conditions in the parking level, on the street level. So as you come in the first drive out, as you come in, you dead end into the ramp itself by creating, and then at the end, that's a tandem parking. So you're going to have double stack parking backing out into, and there's no way of turning into that area. I understand that you mentioned about the trash, but I think even going with the minimum required, City of Glendale required trash, I don't think these two even meet the minimum standard, which is a certain size for recycling, a certain size for trash. In my opinion, I think for 73 units, there's going to be some issues there. Also want to suggest and consider, being that it is such a large structure and large building, and being on a Glen Oaks Boulevard, maybe a drop-off area off the front street. So maybe a carve-out or some sort of it's a fairly large and wide sidewalk. Having a drop-off area, I think, will definitely help.
Cut out, or I'm sorry to add, but cut out for the
driveway. Basically cut out a driveway. So even a valet system or something that would definitely help that situation. So looking at the massing and looking at the overall building design, I really like the design, the approach that it's taking, but I think a serious study of solar and shadowing and shading. You have same conditions facing south, same exact window conditions, and they're treated completely different. You have windows in the center portion of the building that has the top floor has no canopy above, whereas on the right side or on the east side you have projected flat canopies, where on the left side you have these masses of volumes that are coming out, creating some shadow. So I think there needs to be some study there. You're building the structure property line to property line. On the east face, when you look at the east elevation, that's a substantial masonry wall that you're going to be building, and it's going to be facing all the residential, which something to consider. You're creating a 18 foot wall right on the property line. So a possibility of maybe kind of depressing, doing something, some treatment, somehow addressing that. I don't think it's really a neighborly, even though zoning allows you to build right on the property line without having any openings or anything. Something to consider. Having said that,
by east, are you talking about facing the hotel?
Hotel.
Okay.
Yeah, you had a 17-foot wall that it's facing the hotel, and then having said that, facing the westernly property line, you're building the building right up to an existing 1.5 structure. It's not the most beautiful structure, but I haven't really I don't know what you're proposing as far as landscaping, but your shadow, I mean your model that by the way, you don't need 11 pages of the same view, so you can use that packet to add more views, but you have 11 pages of the front facade, and I don't think that's really helping. There's other conditions there it would help for us to comment on. I think that's what you're here for. But west portion, you have quite a bit of shadow getting over to these open spaces that you've created, so I think that's something to think about. Maybe that some sort of a vine or something growing against that building to kind of soften that edge. And then on the north face, I really like what you've done in the middle section, which is the lower portion of the structure or this proposal. A study may help the situation by continuing this lower section onto the wings. I don't know if that's going to help, but you want to be conscious about what is going to be developed in the back of that. By creating this 4-story structure on the side and then lowering in the middle, maybe you want to keep those sides lower as well to maintain that lower portion in the back. I do agree with staff. I think that definitely there's room for a sunken landscape planter area along the north portion, so that it softens the residential portion of it rather than the northern portion of it. But I think I covered everything. I really like what you've done in the back. I think it's definitely going to allow for any kind of a development to happen in the north portion of it, kind of, take advantage of all the landscaping, all the scale, and everything that is being proposed. I really like that, and I think that it can actually work really well if you add that to the east or the west portion of it. But yeah, I think proposing some solar panel locations, how that's going to be introduced, sun shadowing and sunshades and other elements there that will minimize the amount of solar gain to those spaces, and also consider and start thinking about some air conditioning equipment. Some of these equipments, how are they going to be screened? What are they going to happen? Is that going to increase the height of the building? Are they going to be set inside? Where are the access points for these towers that you're going to get to the roof line, and so on and so forth. So all of those become, something to think about.
Mardian.
Thank you. I had the same thoughts. I concur with my colleagues' comments, but I have a little different take on this. I know this area very well. I drive by it almost 2-3 times a week. I don't feel a 4-story building should take place here. 3 stories, even if we're inclined to do 4-story, but it should take place in the middle. I mean, the taper off the edges, in the corners, bring those to 3-story and create a 4-story in the middle. And I think we need, although I like the design, but this design is similar to what's going on in downtown. There's a lot of this happening right now. I think this design could work, but maybe introduce some more sloping roofs in these towers, to create a little more play with it, because these are just duplicated elements that carry out through the whole structure. I have a little concern with the density, but that all depends how we approach the design, whether it's going to stay 3-story or 4-story. But I'm really concerned with the driveway. I really like to see 2 driveways. You have 200 semi-cars coming from one driveway that is going to serve as a service for the facility, for the commercial, for the residential, loading, unloading. I like the idea that my colleague mentions about a cutoff in the driveway to drop off maybe for valet. But my other concern is, we're creating this large building, but none of these planters are on natural grade. And if we're going to assume that this is an open park or a mini park, however you want to call it, I think the front portion should have some tree wells that go all the way, so these trees will last. Otherwise, over time, these trees have to be, replaced because there's no more room to grow. And I do agree with, we got so much balconies going. Maybe these balconies should not be repeated as such. Maybe they should have half wall, half glass in some areas, because if we're going to have 70 semi units, everybody's going to store their trash. I mean, not their trash, their a lot of the stuff in there. And this is guys say we're going to have all these clutters in this balcony, which will ruin the look of this building. And I do concur with my colleagues. I don't think the trash area is sufficient. I need this. The circulation on the first floor from the garage should be an easy circulation, not so, concentrated to one corridor to come out to this common area. I think you should introduce another one. I would have liked to see less density, but I'll leave that for City Council's decision.
Well, I agree with all the comments, especially the ones regarding the interior parking area and the access, pedestrian access, the driving access. I think equipment and servicing the retail is going to be an issue there. I'm only going by the plan or the drawings. It looks like there's glass balconies on the south side, and that's going to create a very big glare problem, as well as your comment regarding the stuff sitting out in the balcony areas. So I think that should be looked at. I totally agree with the planters. All these planters are on top or maybe a foot underneath. For instance, if you have the large specimen tree in the front, you're going to need 6 to 8 foot deep planter to get a tree to grow to every 4 stories. So you don't want trees to be on a very low scale. And the ones in the little courtyard in the back, I think you're going to end up with a lot more planters going deeper into the parking. It may affect your parking area because they can't grow in just 3 feet without being more than 10, 12 feet tall, and you have 4 stories. So I think all the comments are valid, and that's about all I have.
Chair, I have a quick question. If the number of units went down to 73, that means they need 146 parking spaces, right?
Actually 74.
74, so
Times
148. So, and they provided 152. They can lose 4, right?
But you still have to consider the guest parking.
No, I mean, they have 152, so if you go down to 100.
Calculations
changed.
Well, it seems like they're getting a lot of variances. Give them a couple more variances. Let them take out a couple of these parking spaces. They can plant some trees, but...
All they have to drop off some units to make it work. I mean, although it's not under my purview, the R1250 standard, even with the density bonus because of lot width, you can divide it by 1,000. You get, based on the lot size, is 52,000 square feet. So that's 52 units by right. And we're doing 74. So we're dropping this density like to 500, 600 square foot per dwelling unit. I mean, some of the items I think that are necessary for the success of this building, the corridors, the trash, the servicing of the utilities, the landscape, it'll further improve the project. But dropping a few more units here and there to accommodate those, I think it's wise in this scenario. Because if you go out and apply for a project like this without the precise plan, you've got how many variances? Basically every item in the book, correct?
Fair number, yeah.
So, I mean, there has to be some concession. You want all this, but you got to give a little. So that's where
And you want it to be attractive to
attractive,
those that
yeah,
live there.
yeah. That's all.
So what do we do now?
Do you have any comments on the environmental document?
Comments on the what?
Environmental document?
The only comment, I don't know if it's the driveway for me, really. That falls under traffic, although the traffic section that I look at doesn't address that, whether the one driveway or 2 driveways should be.
I mean, even if that says it's acceptable, I think all of our comments, just to be noted, that we all have the same opinion regarding the parking and the traffic.
And if I may add, Mr. Tim, I don't know who mentioned it, whether it was a speaker or a commissioner, putting the driveway on the other side, I think, will serve better purpose because it's not as close as to the intersection. Because you got the intersection, right?
It's a bus stop.
Yeah, the bus. So I think maybe, I don't know if that's going to make a lot of change in the project. But again, if we're going to put two driveways, then that may change also. So, that's something to look at.
So regarding the design, we just make our comments, and do we want to vote to approve this, disapprove it?
There's no approval, right? So
To the city council.
okay, so I'll move with the comments and considerations to approve the project to city council.
It's not a.
I do want to approve the project. Recommend approval.
Sorry.
So would the motion be then for a motion to recommend
approval with the following recommended conditions?
Right.
Which I can read back to you based on your discussion, just to make sure we haven't missed anything.
Sure.
Okay.
It is a record-setting list of conditions in my experience. So, at the plaza, at the public plaza, there's a recommendation to increase the amount of shade. That could be accomplished through planted material, as we've discussed, and I'll get back to those conditions. Would the board also be interested in shade structures? Whatever means possible?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. There's concern about the locations of the trash collection areas as well as the electrical vault for a variety of reasons, including practicality, size, and location. So you'd like to have those locations reinvestigated. There was a call to ask for more of a traffic study. Now, what we can do is express to the council that the board is not, feels that there are better traffic solutions, which we'll get to in some of the other ones, but I'm not sure that we can ask specifically for another traffic study since they've already provided one.
Yes, and the traffic study's been approved.
So we're just bringing up our concerns.
Right.
It's not the flow, no. Access.
Service in and access.
Well, it's
Sounded like
more
they
of
were
a
also
flow as
concerned
well.
about flow.
Well, the flow, yeah.
I have a issue with the flow as well.
Yes, that's what I
Because,
meant. You seem mostly to be focused on on-site flow.
Yeah, nothing
Not that you're
off-site.
concerned about the intersection of
It's
Glen Oaks
within
and
the
West.
structure itself.
And that will become clear in the recommended conditions about the additional driveway and some of your other thoughts. There was concern about the location of the vertical access points in terms of their distance. I assume that was for egress, Mr. Malikian? Mm-hmm. Okay. So we'll ask for further investigation of those locations. Condition that bicycle storage should be closer to the street. There was concern about the configuration of the first floor parking level, which leads to some dead-end aisles that could lead to traffic issues within the garage. The size of the trash enclosure is already mentioned. There is a possibility of including a passenger drop-off on Glen Oaks, a cutout there. Also, that could also incorporate future valet use toward the driveway if that becomes needed. Condition to recommend a solar study, particularly of the south facade, to try to minimize heat gain in the units, investigate sunshades or other means. There is a condition to look into alternatives to the tall masonry wall at the east elevation to see if there's a way to bring that wall down so that it doesn't have as much impact on the neighboring property to the east. At the west, there was a condition to enhance landscaping there to provide a buffer with the commercial property to the west. I'm sorry. There was a recommendation to consider extending the height and configuration of the middle section at the north elevation along the two wings at the east and west so that we could drop the height at the entire north property line lower and to match the central section with the townhouses. There was concern about the sunken planter. This was an agreement with the staff recommendation for landscaping at the north. There was a recommendation that we study the air conditioning units on the roof, how they'll be screened and accessed. There was one board member suggested a 3-story maximum height along the property edges, possibly rising to 4 stories at the middle. Is that a full board recommendation?
I think it's a consideration.
I think it's a consideration.
Okay.
But
and I assume have any of the ones I've read so far been considerations rather than conditions?
Well, they're all,
Or we're not gonna-
since it's a recommendation, they're all kind of considerations.
It's all kind of just recommendations.
That's right.
Yeah.
We'll make some sound stronger than others. So,
scream when you're explaining.
there was a consideration of providing more playful geometry and kind of facade design to avoid looking like other downtown or like the downtown developments. Possibly playing with some of the volumes to create sloping forms. Addition of 2 driveways to the project. Consideration to dramatically increase the size of the tree well for the specimen tree, as well as possibly provide other tree wells across the front facade or across the front plaza area to bring more shade to that area.
Or maybe include in that, they don't all have to be raised planters above this, maybe some ground areas that would be sunken. So vary the,
I would even go as far as removing a couple of the parking stalls and just creating these.
Right. Actually, yeah, I have that written.
I think we should just have a flat surface in that area.
There is sort of in the far western portion of the open space, a larger landscape area that I believe isn't flush with the ground, but is like curb height and then will berm up. So it appears more like natural grade rather than just planters.
but also in the front, I'm saying.
Between the sidewalk and the, yeah, okay.
There was...
On the parking, can you reread that for the record with the parking recommendation? Because I think that's a good one.
Well, let me go through and see if we missed anything. Yeah, because I have that here. There was a consideration to kind of change the appearance of the balconies, which would provide several functions, reducing glare, hiding clutter, incorporating less glass and more solid wall structure. There is a consideration to introduce additional pedestrian circulation from the street into the project, rather than just the one access point that exists. Balconies. Specimen tree needs to be 6 to 8 feet in depth, specifically.
It was just a comment, much larger than you show it.
And then a comment, a consideration that relates to the parking to drop the unit count of the property in total to reduce the parking needs, which would allow removal of parking that could accommodate deeper planters at the front.
Just add to that, such as tandem for residential.
Okay, that's everything I've got. There was a general concern about density, which could be addressed through reducing height to 3 stories or reducing a few units to increase planting area.
Can I just add one more consideration?
More the merrier.
Okay. So when you look at the multiple images of the front, one of the things that sticks out is that how the front end of that so-called park-like element, the grade and all that concrete surface and everything, how it kind of merges into the sidewalk. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if this is even possible, and somehow when they're redoing that sidewalk, somehow merge that with the project and somehow create some interesting effects there so that when people are walking by,
they can kind of see that, and it's a good opportunity for them to look at the sidewalk, maybe the color of the concrete,
So we
some
could
matches it.
change sidewalk paving materials and colors to integrate with the plaza, which could
something.
increase the flow, the perceived
It
flow.
may
The path,
actually.
the path. You're talking about the path, incorporating a path to.
Well, yeah, I mean, incorporating some path or something, the sidewalk that kind of merges into this project and makes this, even though there's a property line, you have a larger outdoor space, so-called, including the sidewalk. So.
Yeah, I think that's the.
So we'll change sidewalk paving materials and colors to merge with the plaza paving to increase
It's a good opportunity.
interconnectedness.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
So I move to recommend approval to council with all the considerations and recommendations
And
and
that's including all the recommendations that staff had.
absolutely.
second.
I'm sorry, who seconded it? Okay, a motion was made to recommend that the council approve the project. This will be a roll call. Mr. Malikian,
Yes.
Mr. Turchian,
Yes.
Mr. Mardian,
Yes.
and Ms. Palmer.
Yes.
Thank you.
As part of that, the environmental, we're not approving that.
No.
That's going to the council, so.
Right. Yeah, that's
So
going
let
to
them
the
deal
council.
with, let them deal with it. That's.
Consider it acknowledged.
So there are no minutes to approve for this meeting. Staff has no other items on tonight's agenda. With that said, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.